Good evening, and Thanks, Peter. Good evening. Welcome to the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. We convened at 5:30 and went into executive session, took no action. I asked at the time whether this meeting was properly warned, and John, you said?
Yes, it was, Dan.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So our first order of business this evening is to approve minutes from August 6th, 2024. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from August 6th, 2024.
Okay, Liz has made a motion to approve the minutes of August 6th, 2024. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0. We'll move on to Chair's remarks. I already gave one of them, which is that our Executive Secretary, who prepares the draft minutes for the meeting, has asked folks to remember to sign in. As I said before, it's about the historical record of the meeting, and, you know, this is, quite frankly, in the 6 years I've been on the board, the largest group I've seen in here. And so I think it'd be nice for us to be able to show that in the historical record. The other thing I want to talk about is related to our microphones this evening. We had some feedback that it was hard to hear us in the room, maybe especially if you're in that little room back there. And so if you cannot hear us, if you cannot hear me right now, could you raise your hand? Okay. And as we go through the meeting, if you are finding that it's hard to hear us, raise your hand. You could say point of order. That's a way to interrupt me. I will recognize you. You'll tell me what your point of order is. And if it's about being loud enough, we will do a better job so that everyone in the room can hear us, okay? And the final thing I want to say in my chair's remarks this evening is how to get in touch with us. Many of you know, but not everybody perhaps, on the town website, one of the pages is just about the select board. On there you'll find our phone numbers, email addresses, and physical addresses, well, addresses to send things, mailing addresses, if you will. And you can send a document, you can send me a letter to my address on the town website. If you send it to my address, I will read it. If you send it to the town, sometimes it takes a while for me to get that document. Sometimes it gets put into this binder, and I only see this binder once every 2 weeks. So if you want a quick response from us, you know, email is the best. You can write a letter and email it to us. It will feel the same way. But you're welcome to mail us as well. I just want to let you know how to do that, okay? So that's all I have for Chair's remarks this evening, and we'll move on to Manager's comments. John.
Thanks, Daniel. I wanted to update the board on a few things and make a few announcements. So the cameras at the intersection of Main and High Streets are installed and operational. Staff are getting some more training this week. So far, it looks good, very positive in terms of the image quality and the transmission on those. Town staff are understanding that pending an asbestos survey next week, the Sportsman's Lounge building on Canal Street will be demolished the week after next. The town tree warden and the town tree board have identified 2 Callery pear trees, also known as Bradford pears, on the east side of Main Street between Elliott and High. Not a huge public safety issue, but nevertheless, they are considered a highly invasive species. And so in a proactive approach to tree management, the tree warden and the board have agreed to replace these 2 trees with species that are native to our region. In the next several weeks, the tree warden will remove the trees and replacements will be planted by the Brattleboro Tree Board this fall. If you have questions or concerns, please contact Pete Lynch at the Department of Public Works at 802-254-4255 or email him at plynch@brattleboro.gov. The finance director has informed me that we will be taking credit cards in the treasurer's office for utility payments and compost recycle bins starting tomorrow, August 21st. There's a 2.7% plus 5-cent fee to use your card. They'll still take checks and cash, obviously. I wanted to thank all who participated in our first annual National Night Out on August 6th. This was a great event on the Brattleboro Common, hosted by the Brat PD. Thanks especially to Blueberry House Ice Cream and Bounce Above the Rest. Finally, the last day to take the survey on the pool feasibility study is tomorrow, August 21st. The link to the survey can be found on the town website on the Rec and Parks page under Pool Project. And that's all I have tonight.
Great, thanks, John. Next up is select board comments or committee reports. Any of my fellow board members with a comment or a report? Elizabeth?
Yeah, there was our monthly meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee, and if you're not familiar with the Traffic Safety Committee, anyone from the public who has an issue about a certain intersection or roadway condition, there's a form to fill out, and the committee will address that concern. And it's a really good committee because what we do is we take the public input and we discuss it and make good recommendations.
Excuse me, Liz. Is that form available online?
Yes, it is. And the meetings are the third Thursday at 8 a.m.
Yeah. Thanks, Liz. Any other board members with a comment or an interjection? No? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on. So, public participation. I've been a little lenient the last couple of meetings because we've had people who wanted to speak about public safety matters that might not be able to stay for a later agenda item. We have public safety matters coming up at about 6:55. And so this part of the meeting is for somebody that wants to speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda. So if you had a public safety comment to make, I'm going to ask you to hold it until the appropriate agenda item. So that being said, if you have a comment to make about something that's not on tonight's agenda, or you'd like to request that the board remove an item from the consent agenda for further consideration, this is a great time to raise your hand and be recognized. Mr. DeGray. And I think you'll also find that microphone's amplified as well, so we'll see how that goes.
Dick DeGray, Brattleboro, and I don't think this falls under the agenda items. I want to talk to you about Plaza Park and the fountain down at Plaza Park, which
Okay.
is not as
I'll
far
give
as I
you
know.
a couple of minutes. Go ahead.
So after our last meeting, when several people who had not attended this meeting came in and were talking about Plaza Park and the fountain, I saw Mr. Reichman at his office hours on Friday, and I said to him we should drain the fountain down at Plaza Park. It would curb all the activity down there of people taking a bath, whether they're clothed or urinating in the water. And so he wrote it down. On Sunday, I bumped into Carol Lalott at Price Chopper parking lot and told her the same thing. And she wrote it down and she said, so I won't remember this. So I didn't see the fountain drained on Monday or Tuesday. And I believe I sent Paul a text message as to say, are you going to drain the fountain? And he returned the message to say, I haven't heard anything about that yet. On Wednesday, there was somebody sitting in the fountain, naked, that I witnessed. And so I was at a traffic safety meeting, which Liz was just talking about, here on Thursday, and I stopped in the town manager's office, and the town manager was in a meeting with someone, so I asked his secretary, could you let John know that we had an issue down at Plaza Fountain? And so I actually thought that the fountain would be drained sometime on Thursday. And so I sent Paul Ethier, again with the park, a text on Friday And to my surprise, his response was, we're not going to drain the fountain, we're going to put a sign up. And you should laugh. And I just shook my head. And I don't know if, John, you made that decision, or Carol made that decision, or you both made that decision. But having people urinate in that water and having kids down there that play in that water, if you think that's the right thing to do, then I think we're in really sad territory for the town in terms of leadership. That fountain has a cover on the top. It should be drained for health reasons. This has nothing to do with safety, for health reasons, because you even have people who are urinating in there, and other people are using it to swim in or take a bath.
Thanks, Dick. That's the time.
That's my 3 minutes?
It is, yeah.
Wow, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's why we're in the shape we're in.
Okay. And so for folks who were here last time, whilst you might feel inspired to applaud, I would recommend that we don't do that. I think that creates an atmosphere that is not really conducive to this kind of business. Sometimes you may feel like applauding, sometimes you may feel like booing. It's not appropriate for this room. So we're going to keep the atmosphere pretty neutral. So if anybody else has a comment about something that is not on tonight's agenda, and I think that, you're just about on the edge of that there. So, yes. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself at the microphone. Yes, please. It's for people. It's for people at home, but it's also like there are people in the back that may not be able to hear you.
I'm loud.
You can use the microphone, please. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Shippey.
Hi, Lisa.
I own Scissor Masters, and I contacted the chief of police to ask. Actually, I sent an email and asked her what her plan was, because she's been here a while, and
Lisa,
I figured,
is this about public safety?
No.
But you contacted.
I wanted to talk to her. To find out what her plan was. She called and screamed at me on the phone. I had to hang up. I sent the email that I sent to her. I sent to everyone in this board. I sent to the town manager, and I sent the response that I sent to her, telling her not to ever call me at my business or ever call me again. She blamed every one of you and the town manager for her not doing her job.
Lisa,
and I just want to know why not one person responded.
I have actually never seen such an email.
Well, check your emails, because you've got one from Scissor Masters.
I do. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So, other members of the public who would like to speak about something that is not on tonight's agenda. And so if it is about public safety, I'm not going to hear it just now. Yeah?
Pierre Landry, Brattleboro. I don't know if I missed it. I've tried to watch the meetings that I can't attend on television. I was hoping to get an update on where we stand with the trash removal contract. I thought that had to be done by the end of July.
Yeah, that's a fair question. It'll be in a future meeting. Is there any really brief update you want to give on that?
Yeah, we've been working on that. Our focus has shifted somewhat to public safety, but right now we're in conversations with one vendor that responded to our request for qualifications on that. We hope to get, we're really waiting on them for information that we need to bring back to the board before we know what pricing is on certain things, and that's kind of where it's at. I think it'll probably be in September, maybe the second meeting in September, depending on the agenda that the board needs to cover between now and then. So that's basically.
Yeah. Any other public comments about something that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. John, would you like to quickly walk us through that?
Sure, there's 2 items on the consent agenda tonight, Board. If you approve this agenda, you'll be accepting a quote of $115,300 from PCS Special Contractors of Squegan, Maine, to replace the waterproof membrane on the Brattleboro Transportation parking deck directly above the first floor space on Flat Street. And you will be approving the single low bid award of the heating, ventilation, air conditioning controls system replacement at the Central Fire Station to Control Technologies of Williston, Vermont for $73,000 and authorizing an additional $7,300 for contingency.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Board members, anyone wish to pull either of those items for consideration? No? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion.
Peter?
A motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Peter's made a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Got
All
it.
those in favor, please.
You never looked up? Robert Rule. Point of order. Point of order?
Yeah.
I would like you to pull a Central Station HVAC contract.
Okay, thank you for that request. We'll see if anyone wants to honor it. Okay, so we got a motion on the floor to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0, and we're going to move on to the first item of new business, which is the FY26 budget process. And I think somewhere we have Kim Frost, our finance director. Hi, Kim. Good evening.
Hi, how are
Thanks
you?
for joining us.
Yes,
Everyone's excited about the budget.
but I bet. Okay, so we wanted to bring you a draft budget process for FY26. So we, as the staff kind of went through our process from last year and what worked and what didn't. And we put that all together into a memo that was presented in April. And then we kind of took what worked and then what didn't, and then like revamped how we think it would look as a draft proposal to you to see if this is something that you would like to move forward with. So if you look at the draft budget process, we have where we would bring the proposed draft budget process to you. Once it's approved, if there's any changes, then we would meet with the staff would meet with the RTM Finance Committee to show them the process so they understand how it's going to work this year. While that happens, the departments will be revising their budgets. We'll be setting up meetings internally to work. We have a committee internally that will work with the departments to look at their budgets and see the things that they're proposing, alternates or whatever it is that they're looking at. And then by October 7th, we will be developing cost estimates for those alternates that are brought forth by the staff. Then we will finalize those numbers and enter the budget into OpenGov. That's kind of up in the air as far as entering it into OpenGov and if that could be earlier or later. Then we would review, complete, and compile a budget package. And then by November 5th, we would bring a draft budget with base budget with alternates to this board. Then we would take that and bring it to the open house. We're proposing to bring the open house later this year instead of before. This way it's a more developed base budget that the public's seeing, so it's not so disjointed. It'll be more of a, a developed budget. Then we'll come back to the board and you guys can review the open house feedback on all the alternates and the base budget. Then the staff will take that back and further develop based on the feedback from the board. Then this is kind of the new piece. We thought we would have focus groups with RTM members, kind of all the different districts, let them see the budget, go through all the lines, see what they are comprised of. Then we would come back to this board and you would consider that budget with the alternates. And then at the end of January, the select board would hopefully adopt the budget. And then we would bring that to the RTM Finance Committee once you adopt the budget so they could see it. And then we'd bring that adopted budget to RTM in March.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Board members, questions about this budget process, and maybe someone could make a motion to kick off the discussion. Liz?
Well, first I'll move to adopt the FY26 budget process as presented, and then I'll ask Kim. That's a great innovation to have these focus groups with the RTM, because at RTM, there's always a budget discussion, and everyone wishes that they could have that input earlier. And so that's a great way to do it, and I appreciate that.
Great.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Other questions? Richard?
I'm just curious, how do you feel your comfort level is with the OpenGov software at this point?
So I think it's good. I think we're at a point where we're going to be starting to pull data in from other programs to feed into OpenGov, and we'll actually be able to see what it looks like. So I think I have a very good comfort on how to move around the budget, and we'll see. The numbers aren't in there yet for us to see like what it looks like. So for me to give you more information on that, but
And so when will you be 100% into that program and not using anything else?
so we're in 100% using.
Oh, you are now?
Yes.
Okay.
Using OpenGov 100%.
And you have been for a while, right?
Yes. This will be the first time, though, that we'll use it 100% for the budget.
Great.
But we're using it for everything else.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Kim. Other questions from the board? Franz?
Thank you, Daniel. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
So looking at this calendar that you've laid out, do you have a date when you think the select board would actually get to look at the budget in OpenGov? And, I see that, I guess the November 5th date is the date of the select board meeting. And I'm wondering how far in advance we'd actually be able to review the numbers and start thinking about it.
So we have it here as 10:15. I just say as a caveat, only because, just in case, because it is a new process, I just want to, have that little caveat that if something were to happen, if it gets pushed down another week, that's why then you have 10:22. It could happen, it will happen around that time before that meeting.
So we'll have several weeks to be
Yes.
looking at things in advance of our actual consideration. I think that's great. And will the public have access to that in the same time frame?
So that'll be up to this board when the public has access to it.
Yeah, so my expectation would be that if the board has this material in the backup material, that's when the public sees it. I have never had an experience where I got a preview before it was in the published material.
Right.
Well, but
And
Kim
that's
just said it would be available roughly October 15th, which would be well before
Right.
the backup material for November 5th.
So, I think the agenda setting committee, which is Liz and myself, will have a conversation about when this is going to be on an agenda. And I would not want the select board to have like a 3-week preview of a budget that the public doesn't have access to.
Well,
wouldn't
there's
make
two
sense.
ways to deal with that. One is to delay the access of the select board, and the other is to give access to the public.
Yeah. My point is that those things should happen at the same time, whether they happen in October or November.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's a decision yet to be made.
Yes.
When the select board and the public will have access to the numbers.
Yeah, thank you. So just so the public knows, like, the budget process is big and cumbersome, and in my experience on the last 5 budget cycles, that budget material is being worked on right up until the publication, which is like Friday afternoon before a meeting. And so I would expect to see it when it's ready, and I wouldn't want us to overpromise and say it's going to be ready in October if we need until November. I'm perfectly happy waiting until November if that's when it will be ready by.
Yeah, and that was actually what I was going to mention is you may remember last year, I think we didn't even make the Friday before your
Exactly.
meeting. It came even at the meeting, and we'd like to do better on that. This is all a goal. This is a plan. We'll try to do the best we can and get it available to the board and the public as soon as we possibly can. But it's a ton of work that the finance director and the assistant town manager are doing to put that together. So
Great. So are you happy with the answer of it'll be available to us when it's ready?
How happy do I have to be to say yes?
You just need
that?
to accept that. You don't need to be doing cartwheels.
Well, I'm certainly not going to advocate for releasing numbers that are inaccurate
Thank you.
and unready.
That's great.
But I would also advocate for getting it ready in a fashion where we really have time to look at it before the meeting. And to me, 3 days is not really sufficient.
Yeah, that's interesting feedback, and you guys can consider that. It is always a challenge. Like every time we have a select board meeting, the documents are available the Friday before a Tuesday. We have people with jobs and lives, and we do our best, and it's a lift every weekend.
And I would just add, Franz, that you're not being asked to make any decisions at that meeting. In fact, you'll have 4 months to go over that draft budget before you have to make a decision. So I think that should be adequate time for both you and the public to understand the numbers, understand what's important to you, and have conversations with the rest of the board members.
Great. Other questions or feedback about the process?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
A couple of things. Did you want to add anything?
No.
Peter, did you want to add anything?
Good.
I'm sorry. So last year, as you kind of just alluded to, it was a mad dash to get all the materials together. One of the things that wasn't available as early as we would usually expect was the full line item budget. We had a different process last year where we looked at kind of a slightly higher level, kind of department level or expense type level. And so I would like us to see a line item budget available when the budget is published, right? So we will do a different process than we have done historically. We will still have this process where we're looking at policy level decisions, but they will be underpinned by the full line item budget. Does that make sense? John, Kim? Is that
So we were thinking, yes, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. And
I mean, in OpenGov, the idea would be that we would be able to publish OpenGov, and the line items will be in OpenGov.
Yeah.
And then here, we would bring the policy level to the board meeting, but you will have access to all of the line items on OpenGov.
Right. And what we have access to, the public has access to.
Correct.
There's no
that would be everybody. Yes,
yeah.
There's no distinguishing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that be part of our process this year.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I wanted to say was, thinking about the budget open house. I think last time we had some feedback about the timing of the open house. I'm assuming you guys kind of thought about that, not so much like the timing within the process, but time of day in terms of accessibility. So have we thought about when a good day of the week or a good time would be to allow as many people as possible to access that?
So we did not yet, honestly. We didn't. We thought about it within the process, and once this is approved, then we can get more granular into how we're gonna, make it work.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's an opportunity for people to give us some feedback about what they would like to see with that. And so unless the board has any other questions, I'd like to open it up to the public. Mr. DeGray. And for folks who are in the back room, it's kind of hard for me to see you. So if you do have something you want to say about this item, you're going to need to maybe kind of come forward a little bit and really give it this, because you're far away. Dick, off you go.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for talking about the line items. I'm actually looking at OpenGov right now in the budget process, and I don't see all the line items in here for the current budget that we're now in. And I think I had made that request a month ago if this was going to be part of it. So if you could answer that question for me, that are we going to have the line items for this current year's budget? And because I can't follow what's going on by line item, by what's here in OpenGov, just what you requested. So if you could answer that for me, that would be great.
Do you have any other questions?
No, that's good.
Okay. So I think your question's about, can we see the line item of this year's budget, the budget we're currently in right now, in OpenGov?
So we're working on that actually in the next week or two to get that ready. That's a whole transparency platform that we haven't been trained on yet at OpenGov, but now that we're deep within the budget process, we're able to now do this piece, which is called transparency, which will bring you all the line items. They are training us on this tomorrow and another session next week. So I don't know when exactly we'd be able to have that up, but it would be hopefully before we, bring the new budget, like that. Hopefully you'll be able to see the line items of
It's a work in
the
progress.
FY25. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other members of the public with questions about the FY26 budget process? Ms. O'Connor.
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. It's not going to come as a surprise to the board when I say that I'm not impressed with this budget process. I think we need a budget process that actually acknowledges the pressures that the taxpayers are under in this town. Last year you folks passed a budget that had the second highest tax increase in the last 8 years, and coupled with what happened in the legislature with the school funding, Brattleboro taxpayers have seen their taxes go up over 15%. And the budget memo here that you folks have put out said, we're going to have less meetings. You need more meetings. You have 17 action items on the process. 13 of them don't involve you. Only 4 do. And as you were just talking about, we're not going to get the budget until November 5th. The next time you consider the budget, I believe, is January 7th. And then 2 weeks later, at your next meeting, January 21st, is the day you vote on the budget. Having 2 meetings to talk about the budget is unacceptable and doesn't do justice to the taxpayers of this community. I also don't think you can focus group a budget. I don't know if anybody's been in a focus group before. You don't focus group a budget, and you don't draft a budget based on a focus group. So I'd really ask you to rethink that. Also, as we're all going to find out here, these people who don't know, you get 3 minutes to talk at a select board meeting. If you talk about the budget only 3 times, I get 9 minutes to talk about the budget, and that's not right. And I would also hope that I brought the form, the sheet, as Daniel, I'm glad you were talking about this, and I'm hoping it's just not the 2025 or FY25 line items and the FY26 proposal. We need a budget department line item that goes back, 5 or 4 years, not just. And I also hope that you'll have it available in a PDF form so people who can't figure out OpenGov can get it, because it's really, really important. And I also hope, and I'm thinking I'm getting the sense here, that by voting for this process tonight doesn't mean you won't be flexible. Because I don't want that to be used against us if I get up and say, hey, there's this big major thing, and you say, sorry, Kate, we're not going to talk about it. It's not in our process. And as we know from tonight, and I'm not making any judgments about what I'm about to say, but we know there's going to be a request to add 6 new staff people to the town of Brattleboro, and that's a minimum of $400,000, total minimum, and add a new police, whatever we're calling it, substation. And we know we're going to get millions and millions and millions of dollars requested for a new pool. You have some huge decisions to make, and I don't think you can make them over 3 meetings. It's not fair to the taxpayers of this community. So basically, I'm asking you, do more meetings, do more work, understand the budget. And if you're on the board and you say, well, I don't understand it anyway, so we don't need to talk about it, you got to understand it, and you got to know what you're talking about on behalf of all the people that are in this room and the people that aren't in this room.
Thanks,
so
Kate.
thank you.
Thanks, Kate. So I'm just going to reiterate, I don't want you to clap. I don't want you to clap. I don't want you to boo. Because, you know what? If you can't handle it, then you shouldn't be in the room. You know, this is a meeting that needs to be run with a certain amount of decorum. And so what you need to understand is that you might like one position and clap it. Someone else may come up with another position, and you may not like that. So you may choose to boo it. If we allow either of those activities to occur, it's not creating conditions that are really appropriate for this kind of meeting. And so I would ask, as I've seen in all the years that I've sat on this board, for us to conduct this meeting in a spirit of collaboration, of civility. And so, whilst you may have feelings, I would ask you to refrain from clapping or booing. Okay? And I'll just respond real quickly to Kate's comments. So, Kate, I think I hear you. I want to just check. My understanding is the first time the board will consider the budget is November 5th. And John, Kim, please confirm whether I'm correct with that.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other comments that you made, I think they're important comments, and I appreciate you making them, and we'll take that into consideration. Other members of the public with questions about the FY26 budget process? Dick. And I actually think this is a good example of, yes, 3 minutes per comment, but I will absolutely recognize people more than once if that's necessary.
So the question on this budget, is the board going to give the administration any direction on a percentage they would like to see the budget that comes back to them for their first review? I believe I heard one of you talking about we were looking at possibly trying to level fund the budget, which is probably impossible, but could be attainable. So that's my question. Are you guys going to give the administration any direction on a percentage you'd like to see brought back to you?
It's a great question. Franz?
Should we discuss that?
Yep.
Okay. I would say probably not, but I'm not closed to the idea of it. You know, there'd be a lot that would go into that that's difficult to do without having the budget. You know, so until you're looking at some numbers, it's hard. I mean, we could arbitrarily choose some percentage that the budget should be increased or decreased. But I don't think it would be possible to meaningfully examine what the money is going to be going to and saying, well, we shouldn't do so much of this and we shouldn't do so much of that. So I don't know. I'd be curious as to what other board members think about that. I'm sympathetic to the idea that there should be a limit to what we're looking at, but how we would arrive at that limit in advance, I'm not sure.
Thank you. Richard?
Well, I feel that level funding should be the goal whenever possible, and I think that has to be a guiding principle in view of the fact that the tax rate has gone up so much. I mean, we have to figure out a way not to have it rise as much as it has, and the select board has a limited ability to control the increase in the tax rate. But I think level funding shouldn't just be a concept. I think it needs to be a goal, but it has to depend on, we have to weigh that against issues like public safety. We have to weigh it against highway needs. We have to prioritize, and I think once we prioritize, then I think we can consider a level funding when appropriate. But I think we have to keep that in mind all the time.
Thanks, Richard. Other comments? Yep.
Just to expand on it a little bit, in my experience in watching town meetings here and elsewhere, there's two ways that you can try to dictate a limit on the growth in the budget. One is to find specific areas where you say, we're going to cut this, we're going to not spend money on that, to define clearly the areas where you think savings can occur, realizing that there are some built-in increases year over year in terms of contracts with the unions and things like that. So there's certain areas that are going to go up. So one way for us or for people in the public to look at it is to find specific things and say, we don't need that, or we don't need as much of that, and we can cut here, 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 and here. The other way that I've seen at least attempts to implement, even at our own town meeting years ago, is for someone to say, let's cut the budget by 10%. I'm not going to tell you how, just, you people who run the town, you do it, but it's this much. I've not seen that be a successful approach. And so, if we're seriously going to do this kind of work, make this kind of effort, the second approach you can do any time and just say, okay, well, our budget was $21-some million last year. It's going to be $20 million next year. 5% roughly cut. We could say that. Or we could try to come up with specifics, but that would maybe have to wait until we have the budget in front of us. All I'm really saying is this is a pretty complex process and one that requires really close interaction between anything the board would say and what the town staff, the town manager's office, the finance department, all the department heads. So again, while I'm not saying this is in any way a bad idea, the mechanics of it are difficult, and I'm not sure how we would go about it.
Great. Thank you. And, what we're trying to do here is adopt a budget process. I think some of these questions can be kind of really dug into a lot more once we have a budget in front of us. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of appetite for saying to the administration before developing it to hold it down by a certain percentage. Liz, Peter, invite you to chime in if you feel like you want to there.
Just a couple of points. I agree with Franz that many of the budget items are prescribed for us. The salaries, the union salaries, makes up a large percentage of our budget. Also, the health care is outside of our control. And the other thing that I think it's important for the town to realize is that last year we had ARPA money. And so that if there were things that we desired for the community, they were rolled up into the ARPA money. We don't have that luxury this year. And it's kind of the similar situation where the state budget was last year with the end of ARPA funding. So we need to, obviously keep the taxpayers in mind and keep our costs to a minimum, but we can't say in advance what that's going to be. We have to go through the process and understand what the needs are and then responsibly weigh those needs against the tax rate. And one of the things that I would like to seriously investigate is revenue sharing from the state because of the costs that the state has imposed upon us, and see where we can go with that. And that's what I'm going to be working on with the town staff to identify where we can approach both the legislature and the governor's office so that the legislature understands what revenue sharing is and helps us make some progress in that regard.
Great. Thanks, Liz. So, folks, I'd like us to move on to the item that I think most folks are here for. Liz made a motion a little while back to adopt the FY26 budget process as presented. I don't know if we made any amendments. I asked you for a line item budget. We could call that a little amendment if you'd like. So maybe take a amended motion.
Sure. I move to adopt the FY26 budget process as amended to include line item budget.
Great, thank you. Franz, you have a question about that?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just that the adopting this as an overall framework doesn't supersede the agenda setting process that the chair and vice chair go through every 2 weeks. So that if we needed to include additional discussion at some point, that could go on the agenda, even if it doesn't appear on this calendar.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Any final questions about it from the public? Okay, seeing none. So Liz has made a motion to adopt the FY26 budget process as amended to include a line item budget. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0. So we're going to move on. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next item of new business, which is the Brattleboro Police Department's data project. Somewhere in this room is Assistant Chief Evans, and I believe on Zoom we have some presenters from the Crime Research Group. I will invite those folks into the meeting, and if Assistant Chief Evans is back there somewhere, he will be making his way to that table. Here he comes. I see him. And so who do we have on Zoom? We have Monica.
Yep.
Yeah.
Monica Weber, and we have Robin Joy joining us on the phone, I believe.
Yeah, and Chief Hardy is going to join as well. And so once you guys are settled, I invite you to kick it off.
And as they're getting settled, I'll just mention that this project that the police department has been working on has been supported by the CRG group, which was offered to the town by the Public Safety Enhancement Team, and they've been very helpful in the work that the police department has been doing. And so with that, I will just turn it over to Chief Hardy.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We're going to start off with a presentation for the data that we've been collecting, and CRG has been helping us to formulate this, and Assistant Chief Evans has been working on this with CRG. So is any kind of introduction you want to go in?
I don't have any particular introduction for CRG. I think they have an introduction for themselves. I don't want to get in the way of it.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Assistant Chief Evans. So Monica and Joe from the Crime Research Group, welcome to our meeting, and we look forward to your presentation.
Great. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thanks for inviting us to the meeting. I'm Monica Weber. I'm the Executive Director of the Crime Research Group. With me today is Dr. Robin Joy. She will be going through most of the presentation for you. But before we started, I just wanted to do a small introduction to describe who we are. John's already given you a little bit of an introduction. But as I said, we are the Crime Research Group, and we are a nonprofit criminal justice research consulting organization. We have been working in Vermont in some form or another for about 20 years, working closely with criminal justice organizations, law enforcement, the judiciary, also working with various town governments, community justice centers, and other nonprofits to help them use their data, analyze their programs, and help just improve their processes. As John mentioned, right now we are working through a contract with the Department of Public Safety to support the 3 communities that are working with the Public Safety Enhancement Team. I know Jim Baker was with you all earlier in the year and talked a little bit more about that process. And so our role really is to come in and provide a little bit more in-depth analysis. Specifically today, you'll look at our analysis of the calls for service to the Brattleboro Police Department. And so that's the brief introduction. I do want to turn it over to Dr. Joy. She can certainly tell you a little bit about herself as well, and then go into the details about what we did.
Thank you,
Great,
Monica.
thank you. Welcome, Dr. Joy.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little quiet, but maybe that's something we can fix on our end.
I'll also speak very loudly.
Thank you.
So I can try that as well. Is that better?
I'm looking to the public and asking them if it's audible to them, and they're giving me nods, so yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for accommodating me. I can't do video, so phone it is. It's a cordless phone and old school over here in Barrie. So, my name's Robin Joy, and I am the Director of Research for Crime Research Group. And for 20 years, I've been serving the state as kind of your unofficial crime statistician. I know where all the data are buried, can answer lots of questions for you. If people want to know, for example, what the average sentence is for a DUI in Windham County, I can tell you that answer. And then we do have these other contracts and projects that we do helping people understand their data and use it in a more efficient way. And so we worked with Assistant Chief Evans, and he gave us 28,758 calls for service to the Brattleboro Police Department from 2022 through August 12th of this year. And that involved 54,000 unique persons and businesses. And before you say that's more people than we have living in our town, you are correct. It also includes anyone who called the police as part of their employment. So a shopkeeper may call, the principal of the high school. So lots of people are reflected in the data who had contact with the Brattleboro Police Department during this time period. They also gave us information on all arrests made, and there were 2,167 arrests, representing 867 unique people. And these were the data that we analyzed. And so you should now be seeing a chart with pretty colors called call types. And for the board and the public, I submitted today two things, this presentation and then a data explainer, a PDF that has some of the raw numbers involved in this and also tells you a little bit about some of the data quality challenges. So there were, in the data, 105 unique call types that Brattleboro responded to. And that's a lot of call types to try to analyze and make sense of. So what we did is we grouped them. And we grouped them into areas that made it easier for me to do the analysis. And so I grouped a bunch of calls into something that I called disordered. And these disordered calls involved suspicious people, trespassing, citizen disputes, threatening, noise disturbances, family fights, juvenile problem, disorderly conduct, vandalism, intoxicated person, harassment, loitering, custodial dispute, property damage that was not vandalism, and vagrancy. So these are the things that make people uncomfortable as they move through public spaces, that are like the constant hum in a town creates an effect on the way that people experience your town. And when we grouped it this way, the most common call group that Brattleboro responded to was these disordered calls. That was 32.97% of all calls they responded to. The next were motor vehicle offenses, including traffic stops, crashes, VIN checks. That was 21%. Agency or citizen assist were 16%. And then I grouped all other crimes, all other types of things that weren't listed as 12%. Property offenses was 10.9%, so that includes the retail thefts. Animal issues was 2.5%. Drugs, and this is if the call was about the drugs, not just if drugs were found. That's different. Was 1.9%, and assaults was 1%. So overwhelmingly, what the Brattleboro PD responds to are these calls of disorder. And then what I did, you'll see a map here of the top 10 locations. So these were the locations that had the most disordered calls. And I give you the raw numbers in Table 4 in the PDF, but Table 5 in the PDF. But I'll tell you them. So one of the things that's interesting about Brattleboro is that you have been struggling with the hotels, and they are, the Quality Inn was 14% of these top 10 locations for disorder. 732 incidents were responded to at the Quality Inn. The Co-op in that area, it was 607 calls. Market 32 was 552. Hannaford's was 542. The hospital was 500. The Transportation Center, 491. Groundworks, the Main Street location, was 407. The O'Connell Lodge, 325. The Travel Lodge, 291. Dallam Chalet, 223. Family Dollar, 2016. And Circle K, 206. And so you can see, so Quality Inn, 732, that's your number one hotspot for disordered behavior, and Circle K is the number 10 at 206. So there's even this wide disparity between how much these hotspots are really taking up the time. I want to say
Robin,
that
can I just
can't go
interrupt? I just wanted to let Patrick know, if you click on the numbers that are on the match, see where there's that 2, it'll expand, right? And it'll show you, if you look on click on that icon, what just on the locating icon there, the little pin. If you click on it, it'll tell you. So that's Hannaford's. There were 200 incidents in Hanson. So that's how that map works. I just wanted to let you know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. And I can't go back in time before the motel program and look at what your calls were, because the computer systems have changed. Brattleboro PD was on a different computer system. That data is very difficult to get out of that system, so I can't tell you the effect that the motel voucher program has had on your prior levels. I can just tell you this is what it is now, from 2022 going forward.
Mm-hmm.
The next chart, and this chart is interactive, you can hover over it and look at the dates and the number of incidents. This is the number of daily disorder incidents that the police department responds to. They respond to an average of 9.9 calls a day, so 10 calls a day for these disordered behaviors. The lines represent the homicides that have occurred in your jurisdiction. And we put them there to look at, do the homicides affect what these calls for disordered services, what effect do they have? And they actually don't have an effect. So I left them there so that you can see that. What pattern you do see is the winter, right? So you can see that, in January and February, there's less people out. It gets darker earlier, so people are less visible, and you have less calls for service. And so that's the pattern that you see. It's seasonal, but you are responding to about 10 calls a day, and sometimes as many as 20 or 25 for these behaviors. The next chart is about the people. So what I did is I took these disordered incidents, and then I looked up what people were involved, and I took the 20 people who were most involved in these in these calls. And so what you have here is an ID number for the person, and then how many disordered incidents. So number one was involved in 151 total disordered incidents. And then I looked for that person in all of the data, and so they were involved in a total of 198 incidents. And of those, 151 were disordered. And what a lot of these other ones, and we'll see what they are in a second, are often agency assists or citizen assists, and it's really reflecting the need that these folks have for services that aren't the police. But we wanted to give you an idea about how many people are involved. And it gets to, I think when Jim Baker was there, a member of your select board asked for, could I tell you if these people are responsible for all these offenses, how many people are responsible for 30 for, to go farther out in the distribution? And that's a really difficult question to answer because so many people are in the data. But what I did do in this next chart is give you a number of incidents distribution. So you can see person number 1 is involved in about 200 incidences. And then just within this top 20, it goes down to about 45, right, 46 for person number 19, and 49 for person 20. So there is a wide variance of people, but these 20 people were involved in 1,700 incidents, and that was 6% of all calls for service that the department had. And when I say all calls for service, I'm actually including things like their public speaking engagements that are in there, things that maybe, we could argue about whether I should leave in there.
Speak up.
Chart she's speaking about is under the
Yeah.
scroll down.
Patrick, would you mind scrolling down?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And Dr. Joy, please direct us to move to a different part of the presentation if you need us to.
Okay, yep. So it should be the numbers of incidents by distribution. So just, again, the point of this chart is that there is a person that has 200 calls for service, and in this top 20 groups of people, you'll get, some of them only have about 50 calls for service as opposed to the 200. And so there is a wide distribution there. These 20
Dr.
people
Joy, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes, sure.
So when you say number of incidents, are you saying number of crimes?
No.
No. Could you
number
elaborate?
of incidents. Yeah, sure.
Could
so
you elaborate?
Not everything that the police department responds to is a crime, right? So a suspicious person may just turn out not to be, that's not a crime. It's something that they go and respond to. Agency assists, that could be an overdose. It could be that they need help, an agency needs help just, protecting a worker perhaps or something like that. Very few of these folks, and you'll see down in a few slides, very few get arrested. In fact, there's some people here in this top 20 who have never been arrested during the data set. And so they don't have a lot of, these aren't necessarily crimes. And that is the reason for the Project HEAT that Assistant Chief Evans wrote about, and this PSET kind of approach of building collaborations with social service agencies to take the weight off of the police department to responding to these incidents. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So now we're going to be on this chart that says daily contacts. And what this is a visualization of every day one of these 20 people had contacts. And so the next one will be how many contacts they had during that day. But this is just every day during this period, how many days they had contacts. A few things about these data. So you look, number 19 doesn't show up if you hover over that last dot. Number 19 doesn't show up until October 30th, 2023. That's the first date in this data set that person shows up here. So where were they? I did get a request from somebody. Do I know where people are from? I don't. I don't know where they come from. This person could have aged into the data set. I don't have any juvenile names. So if they were a juvenile and involved in disordered behavior, I wouldn't know that from these data. So that's a possibility. We're going to talk about somebody who travels between your community and Brattleboro And so sometimes people are traveling back and forth. But what is interesting and what we are telling people to kind of focus on is these parts where the person is not interacting with the police department. Are they stable? Are they in a position where they are, getting the services that they need? I can tell you, because they are not getting arrested, they're not in jail. So that's not where they are. The question becomes, where are they? And what's going on in their life to make it so that they are not involved with the police department. And so now we're going to go to the chart called number of contacts by day. And that is looking at how many contacts a person had on a particular day. And you can hover over those high points and see that somebody, had 8 contacts with the police department in one day. And this is something that we see in a lot of different jurisdictions, that these folks are, everyone's top 20 are oftentimes having multiple contacts with the police department during the day. And so when they are having contact with the police department, you'll now see a chart called all incident types. So this goes to the gentleman's question a little bit about, are they all crimes? And the answer is no. Overwhelmingly, the proportion of calls that they're responding to are those disordered calls. That was actually 65% of all calls involving these groups were disordered. The next one, the next common call type was agency assist or citizen assist, and that was 14%, and it goes down from there. Property offenses, which would include burglary, larceny, retail theft, that was 4% of their contacts. Assaults was 1%. Drugs, 2%. Motor vehicles, 2.5%. So again, it's these low-level disorders that's taking up the time. If we go to the next chart, which is arrests, I show you the number of times that somebody is arrested. So again, this is not a normal distribution, and you can interact with this. If you click on percent arrests, you'll see, you can sort it by low to high. 2 people have never been arrested. So number 6 had 110 contacts with the police department and wasn't arrested. Number 20, 49, not arrested. And so this is really important, and this is where the community service providers can really help step in. And then there are people who get arrested more frequently. And number 5 is arrested 37% of the time that they have contact with the police department. And so this is really where community organizations can come together to kind of help everyone prioritize who needs services and how to get them to them. And then if you go down to the arrested offenses table, and again, this is interactive, you can see all of them. I did group some of them so that they would make more sense. Trespasses was the number one thing that people were arrested for. There were 55 arrests. That was 27% of all arrests. Violations of conditions of release. Those are the conditions that people are released out on bail for. So there's an open criminal case and they're violating those conditions. That was the next common at 20%. Arrest on a warrant, and I don't know what the warrant was for. So that's masking some of these offenses, right? And then disorderly conduct was 10%. Assaults was 4.5%. There were 9 arrests for that. So these folks aren't being arrested, and that's actually, the preferred outcome, right? If you're not doing a crime, you shouldn't be arrested, but they are still taking up a lot of space and a lot of time for the police department. The next map is also interactive and is a location where the 20 people are engaged. And you'll see that this is where they're engaged with the police department. And there are, this gets to the idea that folks are moving through your community and being engaged everywhere, not just those top 10 locations where all the disorder is happening, but throughout your community, which is, consistent with the testimony that you've heard over your discussions with public safety about how people feel in their area. I will say that there are in these data 3 multifamily residences that show up as kind of hotspots. I'm not going to name them in this public space, but I did forward, and you are not that's not unusual. Every organization, every community that we've gone to has some of these multifamilies housing that are hotspots for disordered behavior. And so I sent to John this morning a program that Boston has had really good success with that looks at ways to reduce calls for service in these multifamily housing that essentially involves some warning letters, some fines, and then liens on properties. It is evidence-based. That is that the studies are really rigorous about it. So that may be something that you want to look into. There's also, when we were talking to the statewide PSET team, the Commissioner of Public Safety, et cetera, there was some interest in understanding how they may be able to support towns better dealing with some properties. And then the last chart that we have is about Person Y. And so Person Y was in the top 20 of your folks at one point. He dropped out when I added some more years. He's in the top 20 over in Bennington. And he showed up in Springfield, which is another PSET place that we're working with. The Y-axis here is how many contacts he had with that police department in a day. So you can see that they have a lot of contact. What's interesting is they go off, right, they don't show up in these towns for, almost 6 months. And we looked at the other towns on Valcor. So this was the rest of the state except for Hartford, Windsor, and one other small town. And he didn't show up anywhere else. He showed up in one town once, but we don't know where he was. He wasn't in jail. I looked. He may have gone over to New Hampshire. He may have gone to Mass. He may have gone to New York. We asked Bennington, and I'll ask, Brattleboro to check with their colleagues in their neighboring states to see if, just out of curiosity, if he was showing up there. But this points to, a coordinated need for service, a need for coordinated services across the state, across your region, and especially, with state agencies or the local nonprofits that are providing services, finding ways to collaborate beyond just your borders is also necessary. So that is what we did. I will stop speaking now, and
Great.
I don't know if you want to
Thank you so much,
now.
Dr. Joy.
Yep.
So, Dr. Joy, are you available to answer some questions from the Select Board and maybe from members of the public as well about this particular project?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful.
Yep, absolutely.
And so, Board, we have other public safety items coming up next. I would really ask us to just keep the questions to this particular project. I suspect we'll have more wide-ranging questions for the Chief and Assistant Chief shortly. So, Select Board members with questions about this data project. Franz.
Well, it's not a question. I'll just make a comment that I was a little skeptical hearing about data collection. Not that I'm skeptical of data, but it wasn't apparent to me how the data would be useful particularly. But having heard this presentation, it's much more clear to me that this is a worthwhile aspect of the efforts that we need to undertake.
Great, thank you. Other board members, Richard.
Assistant Chief Evans, this is your project, that you're sort of the person in charge of the data collection for Brattleboro?
If you wish to be interrogated.
I've definitely put a lot of focus on it, I guess. I'm not sure if I've been designated the person.
This is a collaboration, right?
Yeah, there's definitely collaboration.
Yeah, but you're like the point person for...
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what's the next step? I mean, we have the data, and the data will be coming in on a continuing basis. Is there, what do you do with this data once you have it?
Is that a question you'd like to try and answer, or Dr. Joy could chime in as well?
If you want, we could, that's definitely something we could talk about next.
Okay.
For next steps as opposed to now.
Great, thank you. Peter, Liz? No? I have a few questions, Dr. Joy. So as somebody that works for a social services agency and has been a little bit involved so far in the work that we've been doing with Jim Baker through the Public Safety Enhancement Team process, this is a presentation that I've already seen at a prior meeting. I really believe that this approach about collaboration that is data-driven between social service agencies and public service entities can yield better results. I don't believe it's the thing that will solve all of our problems here. And as you were walking through the data, it was, I don't know, I mean, it was a feeling I got in the room that people were like, wow, there were so many people committing crimes. And that's why I wanted to ask the question that, like, okay, that person who's getting called X hundreds of times, that is not hundreds of crimes. This is evidence that people are reaching out or, are being caused to reach out to the police department when they actually need something else. And the police department respond because that's what they do. And so what it speaks to, I think, is this potential for better collaboration, yielding to better results, meeting people's needs, understanding and being curious about individuals, not talking at this very general level, right? We're talking about 20 people right there with names, histories, stories, people that we know, people that we're connected to, and people that I actually think that we can, have some kind of positive collaboration with. And they're not easy, right? If we're picking the 20 people with the most contacts, do you think that's going to be easy? I don't think so, right? But if we can make an impact on aspects of what's driving that behavior, that's causing those contacts, I think that's going to be good for our community. And it's work that I think I'm personally really committed to whilst I'm on this select board. I'm really happy that this work will happen in a space that is not just the select board and just the town administration. It's going to be a collaboration with, all of the social services and other providers in the community. And so I just really wanted the public to understand that I think that is a potential area for success. For people that are just seeing this for the first time, maybe there's a lot to digest there. I've sat with this now for several weeks, and I'm really committed to investing in that process. So I just want to thank you for the collaboration. And then my one actual question for you is, this is a project that you are already engaged with in other communities. I think you mentioned Bennington and Springfield. And so they're a little further down the road with it than we are. Can you speak to whether it has had some positive impact there?
Well, what I can say is we actually did the data piece. We're doing the data piece for everyone at the same time. You're the first one whose the data piece was actually completed. We just presented to Bennington the other day about their data. So they are struggling. I think that everyone's trying to figure out how to best use this data. One of the things that Bennington is going to do, there's this chart that I showed you of the number of contacts, per day, and thinking about that as a kind of how do we make it so that you get the service to somebody who's blipping out like that. So I'll give an example. There's an address in town that, one person had 10 calls to service, was one of these 20, had 10 calls to service to that address in 1 month. So that's how they're going to begin to use these data to target or identify who best to reach out to at this moment in time, right? This is the person that's clearly not okay, and how do we get them help? So that's how they're going to use it. I think that so the meeting that you saw this presentation in before, I got there was a moment in that meeting when somebody asked how many of the social service agencies knew two of the names on that list, and my sense, I can't see anyone, my sense was that there was a lot of agreements there. And I think that was a really powerful moment for your town and building this collaboration. So that's what I think.
Thanks, Dr. Joy. Elizabeth?
Yep.
So I'm just I appreciative of this information and your coming here and your collaboration with our police department, but also the next steps, they're also very positive. So dealing with each individual's problems solves goes a long way to changing the situation that we're faced with a collective problem, with the collection of people who have really complex needs. So there's so much more that the town has identified that's on our plate, but I want to address that and put that into perspective, but I'll wait until the police department has finished their presentation.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, at this point, I'm going to invite members of the public with questions or comments for the presenters. We've got a couple of people on Zoom. If you could raise your hand nice and high in the room, I think I want to get like a little stack going. So let's see. So let's go Abby, Dick. I don't know your name. Janet. Okay, we'll go Abby, Dick, Janet, and then I'll come back. All right, so Abby.
Hi, Abby Manukin.
Hi, Abby.
And it sounds like you can hear me. I want to thank the board for continuing to have these meetings accessible on Zoom. I think that's really important, so thank you for that. I'm really glad that to see so much participation and grateful for this last presentation about data. The community safety review process that the town went through really highlighted the need for data collection and filling in some of the gaps in data collection. And so I really hope that this is part of that work. And I guess I have one comment and one question. I really wanted to highlight the presenter's name is Ms. Joy. Is that it? I appreciated that presentation and just want to really highlight how she said numerous times, not everything the police respond to is a crime. And that in fact, overwhelmingly, the calls were not about crimes. And I'm just going to pause there for a second and then repeat that. Not everything the police respond to is a crime. And that feels so important in this moment as we're at a meeting that is talking about the possibility of expanding police presence so that we can really understand how police are not the best tool to address the numerous unmet basic needs that people have in our community. And so I'm just really hoping that we can interpret the data in similar ways so that we can see, and I've heard the police department acknowledge this as well, we can't police our way out of these problems. And so just hearing that data feels so important in this moment. And my question is, maybe I missed it, whether this data report is purely like presenting the data or if it also comes with recommendations of their own.
Great, thanks for that question. Dr. Joy, are there recommendations from this data?
Well, the recommendations are to continue with the process that's been started of collaboration with the social service agencies, of getting over some of the barriers to sharing information, right? So the police can share some things, and then how do we, navigate the HIPAA and the substance use confidentiality rules, et cetera, to get services. And so that's part of the work that the statewide PSET team is doing to overcome those barriers. But our recommendations are to continue with this collaboration in the way that works best for Brattleboro.
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. DeGray.
Yeah.
Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. So one of the things I didn't see in the data collection is how much time an officer is spending on these people, which I think would be great. So is there any way to get that into the matrix about when our officers are tied up, especially when these are not crimes and no one's being arrested? But it would be great to have the data even when they're being arrested. And so there's a great consumption of time when you see number one and the number of visits that we have with him when our officers could be doing other things. So I think, my first question, is there any way we can incorporate time that the officer spends with each person that is on this list?
Great. You have other questions?
I'll save it.
Okay, thanks. Chief Hardy, Assistant Chief
So
Evans.
I think it depends. I think there's a few questions.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, yep. So it seems like a really easy question, but it's not. So there's the time that an officer is interacting, then there's the report writing, then there's this, then there's that. So we'd have to really kind of define that. And then the other question is, can we extract some of that information from Valcor? And that would actually be the really big question, is can we extract that information from Valcor? And then how do we calculate what time is? So I can certainly follow up with Assistant Chief Evans on whether this is even a field that can be extractable on when they clear the call.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Evans, did you want to add anything to that?
No, other than I could maybe collaborate with her some more to see if that's possible. I really don't know.
Great, thank you. Okay, Janet, right? Janet?
Janet Pushkal from Brattleboro. I just had a question for Dr. Joy. I was really, I missed the part where you said that the data didn't correlate the murders with the
disorder,
with the disordered calls.
Yeah.
And so so my understanding is that at least one of those had contact with the police prior to a murder. And I'm just wondering where that shows up in the data. Are we attentive to that kind of involvement?
Okay.
That maybe there could have been some intervention at that level, or is this report simply focused on the disordered calls?
Thank you.
Maybe I'm confused.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to be answered here. Dr. Joy, maybe you want to speak about the correlation between disorder and homicides, or lack of correlation?
So what we were really looking at there, so I did not go through the data for the people accused of homicide to find out where, I didn't go do that investigation. This wasn't an investigation to how somebody ends up being accused of homicide. It is a more of, in some jurisdictions, there's studies have shown that if there's a lot of disorder, that it actually almost predicts a homicide, that a homicide is going to happen because there's this anxiety that is in the atmosphere, for lack of a better term, and that these levels of disorder sometimes can lead to a homicide just because, what turns out to be a fight turns out to be a homicide because somebody hit their head on the curb or something like that. I don't mean to be gruesome. But so that was what that chart was looking at. Somebody had asked me, was there a relationship between disorders and homicides in general in the town? And the answer is no.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Joy. Other members of the public that would like to speak about this data presentation? So I see we have one on Zoom. I'm going to go to the Zoom one next. Sir with the blue shirt, and then yes, yourself, and we'll see where we get to at that point. Okay, so hello, David.
Yes, okay, David Lovenbach, District 9. I may have missed it, but I didn't see this report in the backup material, so I wanted to ask if this report is publicly available, and if so, I'd hope that each of the tables and graphs would have some documentation to make clear what the data showing. Thank you.
Great. Very clear question, John.
Yeah, we have copies of most of the material here in the room, and our plan was to make the rest available with the minutes. So.
Okay. Yeah, this was kind of a late.
We got the report today, I believe, so we didn't have time to get it in the backup materials on Friday.
Great. Okay. So.
Hi, Randy Blodgett from West Brattleboro.
Hi, Randy.
Dr. Joy, I'd like to thank you for your report, and my question is very simple. Is there national or international documentation to support what we do next? Is there any information where the social service interaction has helped? If so, how much and how long?
Thanks, Randy. I want to say a weird little thing that actually all questions come this way, and then I deflect them off and in whichever direction. But thank you. Your question is clear. Is there any national or international information that supports what to do next?
Yes, there is. Coordinated community responses have been used for a very long time. And in fact, probably some of the oldest ones here in Vermont are what we call the community coordinated response to domestic violence. May not have solved the domestic violence issues, but it certainly does bring together coordination and better outcomes for folks who are experiencing domestic violence. The question I think that Brattleboro actually has to ask at some point is, what does success look like for Brattleboro with this project? What is it? And when you figure out how you want to answer that question, then you'll at least be able to measure it and try to compare to other jurisdictions who are doing the same thing.
Thank you. That's helpful. Ma'am? Hi, would you come to the microphone so people can hear you? And if you could just introduce yourself.
Hi, Christine Allen, Executive Director, Turning Point, 39 out Flat Street. Couple of questions. How is HIPAA preventing data from being shared? 1.9% for drugs. I'm curious, when folks, officers show up on the scene, does that number increase? Is there a way that we're able to track that data differently? If a call is, someone's lying in the street, so, EMS shows up, is it actually drug related? I'd love to get that data. I think that's it, yeah.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Assistant Chief Evans or Dr. Joy, I don't know if you're able to answer either of those questions, limitations of HIPAA or HIPAA restrictions and drug involvement.
If Dr. Joy wants to answer on her behalf, then I could maybe get on after.
Great, thank you. Dr. Joy?
Yeah, so on the drug-related stuff, so there's a call type in the data, and if that call type involved drugs, like drug overdose, drug dealing, drug possession, right, then it was grouped as drugs. There's a different data point that looks at whether or not drugs were involved or present. And we did do some analysis on that data point. The data quality there isn't very good yet. So that's, that was a recommendation that we did have for the department, is to really kind of look at the way that that data is being recorded. I think to another point on, right, so adding EMS data to this would be helpful because then if it comes in as an agency assist, but the EMS were called because it's an overdose, we would be able to tease those out. But right now we can't do that. And then the HIPAA issue is something that all the towns are struggling with, but I'll throw that to Assistant Chief Evans.
Assistant Chief Evans, would you like to take that one?
Yes. So we've struggled with HIPAA, HIPAA or similar types of regulations for as long as I've been a police officer, so I'm 26 years in. And what we're trying to do with our data is simply present our data to the different service providers in town without regard of getting any data back from them, because that's always the stumbling block when we have collaboration, especially with medical providers, because they're very limited on what they want to or in many times can provide. So we're trying to focus on.
Somebody's speaker is speaking.
Oh. So we're trying to focus on getting all the data we have out to the service agencies, because we have a lot of data that we think could be very useful for them in helping make decisions for them with their services on how best to move forward with people, other than us interacting with them or arresting them.
Great, thank you, Assistant Chief
Could
Evans.
I clarify something there?
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah. From what you said, it seems to me that the police information is not HIPAA protected, so you can share it with other agencies, but that the information that other agencies have may be HIPAA protected, so they can't share it back with you. Is that the case?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yep.
And this is really for our police force. Under these types of grouped in disorder, there's family, fight, domestic. And I would have assumed that these, what I would call crimes against primarily women and children, they can lead to much more serious crimes than this disorder group would seem to be projecting. Do you have data that shows repeated domestic violence leading to more serious crimes?
Thanks, Liz. Dr. Joy?
Domestic violence leads to homicide. That certainly is a strong connection in our state. Where half of our homicides in the state are generally domestic violence. But in most of these jurisdictions that are doing this sort of work, if a call comes in as a family fight or disturbance, sometimes it's not actually domestic violence, right? Or how you would interpret to be domestic violence. It could just be, people are screaming at each other and somebody heard it and they're calling in. So it is still keeping there in the disordered idea. I've done a lot of research on domestic violence offenders in Vermont, and like all offenders, they tend to be, a lot of different types of offenses. But overall, and just to give people in the room a sense of what Vermont's crimes are really like, in the criminal court system, the most common crime is, by number of charges, violations of conditions of release. And then it goes down to DUIs, driving on suspended licenses, domestic violence, retail theft. So those are the crimes that people commit in Vermont.
Thank you, Dr. Joy.
Domestic violence in particular leads to, sorry, go on.
I'm sorry, did you want to say more about that?
No, that's okay.
Okay, so we have quite a few other people who would like to speak on this. We're pretty behind time. I really want to make sure we have a good amount of time for the next presentation. So I'm going to give this another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll move on. And there will be a lot of opportunity to talk with the police department. So I'm going to go to Bethany next, and then I think I saw Danny. Hi, Bethany.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I just had two things for now. I don't know, maybe I'll have more later. So Bethany Ranquist, Brattleboro, and then also I tend to be here representing NEYT. I just have two quick questions. One is was I correct in understanding from the presentation that those 20 individuals account for 6% of the total calls that the police department is receiving? In which case, does that mean there's 94% of calls that are not related to those 6 individuals? And I'm curious what that looks like or what data collection there is on that part, because I get that 6% is really high, but 94% of not being those 20 people seems like I'd like to know a little more about that. And then the other question is, is there a place that I just want to say my 2 questions so that I'm not taking up too much time, and then whoever answers.
Thank you.
And I know I'm addressing Daniel. Is there a place that we can view the map with the clickable links that were presented? Is that available? And if so, I missed it, but could you just let all of us know where we could see that so that we have time to peruse it? Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany. Super clear. So first question. So 6% of people no, 20 people are taking up 6% of police time or responses. And you nodded, yes, that is accurate. And anything to say about the fact that there's 94% of folks spending some other amount of time with?
See if Dr. Joy has anything she wants to say first.
Thank you. Dr. Joy?
Yeah, I think to the speaker's question, it depends on what you want to measure, because don't forget, like, in there is also every time that the police go to a school to talk about how great their job is, right? And the public speaking. So what is it that you really want to kind of understand by asking that question? What do I do with all the vehicle crashes and things like that? So what the reason why we present it that way, because every town has people that we've looked at, and we've actually done it in the PSET towns and one other town, of these 20 folks who do take up 6% of the time of these police departments. And these are the folks that also tend to make people react to their continued arrests or continued interactions negatively, right? And so focusing on those folks for interventions is why we do it that way. But, you know, our website is crgvt.org, and you're free to email me any questions that you may have, and I'll try to work through if we can answer that question for you and what it would look like.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. Okay, so I'm going to take one more question, then I'm going to give it to Assistant Chief Evans to wrap up, and then we'll take a brief break. Danny.
Thank you. Danny Lichtenfeld, I'm the director of the Brattleboro Museum. I've heard a couple people respond to the presentation tonight by drawing attention to the fact that very many of the calls that go to the police don't end up actually being technically recorded as crimes. And it seems like there's some implication that that may suggest that calling the police was not the best thing to do in that situation. And I just want to push back against that, because, you know, when somebody's standing across the street from the entrance to the museum and behaving erratically and shouting obscenities at our staff or volunteers or visitors coming and going, we don't know whether what they're doing is a crime or whether it's about to become a crime. And in fact, many of the times, maybe the reason it doesn't become a crime is because we do call the police and the police manage to diffuse the situation so it doesn't become a crime. So I just wanted to share that thought.
Yep, you're ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Assistant Chief Evans, did you want to speak about next steps, and then we'll take a brief break?
Sure. If I could say just a couple quick things that I heard that I just want to make sure people got a good grip on. One is part of this process that CRG did for us, which we wholeheartedly appreciate, by the way, was to help us evaluate how we record our data. And they identified many places where we can do a much better job with accurately getting our data in so that it'll be more useful to us. So we have made some changes, and we'll be making more changes to how we do that. As we've talked about, Valcor is a new program for us. We're about 2.5 years into it. So that's been a learning curve, and plus we have a lot of new officers that have come on the force in the last couple of years. So just a learning curve to try and get our data better calibrated so that it's more useful to us and more useful to the community. Some of the stuff that Dr. Joy talked about, like when she talked about call types can change in our system. So as Danny pointed out, they could call about a dispute in the parking lot, and we get there, and it could have been something completely different. Or it could turn into a domestic assault, or could have just been a miscommunication between people, or we could have got there and no one was there when we got there. So there's a lot of ways that those things could change between when she runs data and analyzes it, as opposed to when the case gets finished before there's a decision made on it. That goes with the drug thing too. Like there could be initial data that gets put in that isn't drug related, and then after investigation is done in a particular case, it has drug links to it that get added in after. So we're working through that. And also to what Danny said, we have a lot of those calls that people don't get arrested at, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't some concern of a crime occurring, which is generally why people are calling us. So if you go to the dispute and you get there and there's two people having an argument in the parking lot outside Latches, because one person liked the movie and one didn't, we get there and it's just what people heard from their window in their apartment. So we go for a dispute, we get there, it's not really anything of a criminal nature. We've also had the opposite happen. We recently had a medical call for a man that fell off a ladder. And then the fire department got there, bless their hearts, and found out that the man had been shot multiple times. And when he called in, he just didn't want to say he got shot, so he said he fell off a ladder. So there's that wide breadth of things that can happen between what the initial call was and what actually occurs that we have to address in there. And the collaboration part, we do have extensive collaboration on many things that we work on, especially like sex crimes, for instance. We have multi-jurisdictional and multi-discipline collaborations on those to actively investigate those things, to find best practices on how we can collaborate to make investigations most effective all around, not just criminally, but how do you reduce those things from happening? How do you keep people safe? All those things, which is something that we're just trying to apply more broadly in this area where we have, perfect example, we have the 20 people that are consuming a lot of resources. Clearly, they need some resources, and clearly, like, they're not getting the right ones. So how do we best work to minimize that? Like, so many of those people didn't get arrested because in the end, we didn't have, like, criminal activity that they were going to get arrested for yet. They're using a lot of resources, and they're making people nervous downtown. They're calling and complaining because that's why we're showing up. So how do we get them resources so that they get off that list? We just hit the right factors with them, and we're trying to do that by getting everything we have out to the service providers as best as possible so that they can use that data to inform their decision-making as well as their own.
Great. Thank you, Assistant Chief Evans. Thank you, Dr. Joy. We're going to take a break until 8:15, and then we'll come back for the next agenda item. So the next item on our agenda is excuse me, I should probably be able to say the name of our town. Brattleboro's Police Department's Downtown Safety Action Plan. And we got several things to consider here. And John, I believe you're going to set the table on this one?
Yep, as Chief Hardy's returning here, I'll just mention that the Select Board has town staff working on a wide-ranging agenda to address public health and public safety in Brattleboro. And this includes work and initiatives in at least 12 areas, including the one you just heard about, the data project, which is all about trying to get out in front of some of the issues that we're seeing. But the Select Board also has us working on state legislation reform in a number of areas, working with a legislative delegation, a safety zones ordinance, so improving our municipal ordinances to be able to direct activity towards behaviors that are not acceptable, a communications plan around safety, the team of teams collaborative, that's all the service providers getting together with the town departments, trying to, again, get out in front of things where we're just kind of on the back foot all the time. The data project, the community safety fair and forum as a way of communications with townspeople, which we'll address after this item. The collaboration that the police department has with HCRS on the police liaison program, Project Care and possible Turning Point collaborations, human services funding, community safety review recommendations. The board would like to go over those probably at the next meeting. A resource mapping project at the library, and situation table core data training from the Department of Public Safety, which I learned today that Commissioner Morrison has signed a contract to provide this at 3 sites, including Brattleboro. So that's very exciting and very helpful. We're looking forward to that. So those are like the 12 big things that we're working on. The 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th are things that are key components of Chief Hardy's Downtown Safety Action Plan that she'll be presenting tonight, and we'll be looking to the board to possibly take some action on tonight. None of these items alone is going to solve the challenges that we're seeing in Brattleboro, but orchestrated together and with the service organization's assistance and support and with the community's support, I really feel we can make a difference and, again, get out ahead of some of the issues that we're just reacting to all the time. And so I think the next item here, the Downtown Safety Action Plan, is a really important next step in this.
Great. Thank you, John. Chief Hardy, Assistant Chief Evans, we look forward to your presentation.
Okay. I know that we sent the memo. I don't know at what point you would want me to talk about, like start at the memo, since it has so many different parts. Do you want me to start with?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Maybe if we could begin with the Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team project.
Okay. Okay, so we actually brought this to Select Board in 2022. We asked for the permission to have somewhat of a pilot program to integrate some civilians that were attached to the police department, that work with the police department, but were not armed police officers. We started the program in 2023. We took a young man and we put him in the program, and he was someone who walked up and down downtown, dealt with the businesses, dealt with the people that were staying downtown or gathering downtown, and offering them services that we could get for them, so that way to try to mitigate us having to deal with them in a police manner, as police officers. And the program worked really well. We started out with Roman Cope, actually, and the business owners were very happy. They were calling me, they were telling me that this is working really great to have someone that's a face that they can talk to every day and they see walking up and down downtown. And so Cope is actually now a Brattleboro police officer. So we filled the spot again, and we hired Jacob Gouger, and we put him in that spot. And again, we got rave reviews for the position. Everyone loved it, that they had someone that they could talk to, call on, and see on a daily basis up and down, walking up and down Main Street. So we didn't have the resources to have the officers in patrol, because we also answered so many calls. We didn't have the officers in patrol to be able to have downtown as much as we would have liked to. So we had that position going up and down downtown, and now Officer Jacob Gouger is now Officer Gouger. So the program has not only proven to work well with our interaction with the public, with the business owners, having eyes downtown at all times for us, helping to be a force multiplier for the department, but also has produced Brattleboro police officers, because those people have come in and seen how we operate, wanted to be a part of our team. They're local people. They wanted to stay in Brattleboro and do their best for the community. So they stayed on and they became police officers. One of the things that we have as far as the resource team, and why we call it BRAT, because it's the Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team. And so the part of the team members would be that position that we asked for in 2022 as a pilot to be a permanent position. And what we suggest is that if we can fill those two of those positions, we can then provide someone downtown that can operate with the businesses, be someone that they can count on to be downtown because it's a dedicated two people down there. And also be our eyes and our ears for any situations that are going on downtown. We started it after we had an incident at the parking garage where a woman's car was taken. And so we hired the security, you gave us permission to hire the security to basically address mostly the transportation center, the parking garage, but then we were able to extend that to other parts of downtown, including the library. And that has worked out really well, especially in the library. The problem being that, as with everything else, security services are hard to fill their positions. They're not always readily available because some of the security officers work at different locations, so they may not be available or at the hours and the times that we need them to be. So we had suggested that if we can hire these individuals, that we can train them in different aspects of being our eyes and ears, and they would be a part of our team, of the Brattleboro Police Department team, but in an unarmed position. So we would train them ourselves, but we would also have them be level 2 officers in the state of Vermont, and that will allow us to be able to utilize them in ways that we would not be able to utilize every civilian. Some of the examples of that would be just for, like, if there's an accident downtown, in the downtown area, is there someone that needs assistance, maybe that they're trying to escape from a domestic violence or human trafficking situation, they will know how to interact with them and get them to the right resources. Also, if there's a crime that maybe happened hours ago and the person wants to report it, they will be able to report it to members of that team. We also will be able to utilize them because they will be able to enter their own information into the VALCOR system, which you have to be a part of the police program or be a part of a police department to be able to access that system. So that's the reason why we want them to be level 2s. And also because the training that comes with that. Because anyone that we would hire to do that would not only be have a very, very strenuous and rigorous background investigation, but also they would have to go through our VALOR program, which we've started for new recruits that we bring in to the police department, because we want to make sure that everyone that joins the police department honors our values and our core mission and our dedication to the community. So it keeps us on an even keel of having everyone on the same page with the same thought process in mind. And then, of course, that they would be able to interact as far as the businesses, which the businesses have been, we've talked and talked and talked with the business owners. And so it would be something that we could also have as far as a constant. So if it's a constant in the business owners and in the parking garages, and also we can have those people be able to do some of the things that I can't pull officers out to do, such as maybe if someone needs escorts to their car, or maybe they're coming out of Latches at night, or maybe they're coming out of one of the restaurants and they feel like they want someone to walk them to their car. We will be able to provide that with these team members. Did I cover anything? I think you covered it. Good? Okay. Yeah, so that's really the gist of what we're asking for as far as the BRAT team.
Great, thank you. I think this might be a good point for some questions about that. We have really... Yes. We have quite a lot of things in this memo, and we also are going to take maybe 3 separate pieces of action. So, Board, if you would be willing, I think it would be good to take the motion on the BRAT program right now, 2 BRAT folks, have some questions about that, hear from the public, and then maybe take some action on that, and then move on to the next thing. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion to formalize the Brattleboro Rescue Assistance Team.
Resource. Sorry, Resource Assistance Team.
Oh, Resource Assistance Team. And hire 2 team members to replace the contracted security officers downtown as presented.
Thanks, Peter. Discussion on that motion from the Select Board, first of all. France?
Thank you, Daniel. So, as things stand, we have had 2 security personnel, one at the Transportation Center, one at the library, and this building and the Recreation Building across the street, Gibson-Aiken Center. So this particular motion says we'll still have 2 people. So we'll basically be replacing the security people that we've hired from an outside agency, but I don't see where that includes, the contact with the downtown, with the Main Street as a whole, and the merchants on Main Street, et cetera. So I'm just wondering, not that I'm against this, but it seems like you were talking about something that's bigger than this.
Well, it's absolutely bigger than this. This is what we're asking for at this moment, because this is something we can implement immediately. And if we go through steps, then we would go through what we're asking for to continue. But at this point, the 2 team members is for immediate action. So because of the fact that if we are able to hire them, we need to get them trained. And we also will have a dedicated officer with them downtown, so that officer will have all the arrest powers that will be needed downtown area, so that way the rest of the officers can be taking care of the rest of the town.
Great, thank
you. Just a quick follow-up.
Yep.
So what would you envision as the level 2 officers team as a whole, presumably under this Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team? How big would you see that getting to be sometime in the future, or do you have any thoughts about the future for that?
I have thoughts about it. I think that immediately in the future, if we were able to get 2 now, I would ask for 2 more probably to be able to have more hours of someone being there as a constant. Right now, I'm trying to cover those areas where we're covering with security right now. But my thought process is to be able to even cover even more hours of that being a constant, so that I don't have to pull officers from patrol, especially because we've had people that have called us and we haven't been able to respond to them in that area by the latches, by the downtown restaurants, by Echo, because officers are maybe in West Brat handling other incidences.
Okay,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hardy. Thank you, France. Elizabeth, and then Richard.
Chief, Assistant Chief, is there, what are the budget implications? I know it was quite expensive to hire the security for the transportation center, and I think it's a wonderful program, but I just wondered if you could tell me the relative increases in fees.
I would have to leave that to John.
Okay.
John?
Well, we're thinking that this will about break even or be a little bit less than what we've been spending on security services. Neither of them are budgeted at this point, so we're trying to find a place in the budget to cover this. It's going to be a challenge, but we're hopeful that we can make that work out in the FY25 budget. What the chief was referring to in terms of expansion is something that if you want us to develop a full cost proposal for the FY26 budget, we can do that as part of the budget development. So,
great.
That sounds super.
Yep.
Thank you.
Richard?
Does this proposal mean that the library would lose its dedicated person that it has now?
Thanks, Richard. Chief Hardy, did you hear Richard's question?
Yes, I heard it. No, it wouldn't lose. Well, if you say dedicated person, it's really a dedicated person when that person's available.
Oh, okay. Well, I had the impression that the library had like a regular person, but the hours have been irregular. Is that what you're saying?
Right, because you have that's the same security company that we've contracted. And so when that person can be at work, that person is mostly spends at the library. We try to make sure that they're there for late nights, when the library closes late nights, because that's for safety issues and reasons. But that person also has this building, especially like select board nights, and that person also may have rec center at some points and times too, especially when there are a lot of kids there. So no, we would not be taking away from that. We would try to be having that as part of the plan.
Right. So it would be the same, basically the same level of support they're getting now.
Yes, sir.
Great. Peter?
Yeah, I think so. If what I'm hearing is if we pass this tonight, is what we're going to take is a good situation, and it sounds like make it better, a little bit more stable, a little bit within our control. We're able to point and them in the direction in which we need them. And if there's a few things that I've heard in the hundreds of conversations that I've had with people regarding downtown safety issues, more foot patrol, even though I see you guys down there all the time, more foot patrol is what this will also provide, giving 2 dedicated people to our downtown.
Yes.
Great.
Plus a sworn officer.
Plus a sworn officer, yes.
3 people. I amend my comment.
Great, thank you. Chief, thanks for the presentation. And so these 2 people would be unarmed by choice, but they would be sworn, and they would have some police capabilities at a slightly different level than what most of our officers are at. I see this as one way to have better collaboration. I see that these resource officers or resource assistance folks could, with the right training and the right connections, be good collaborators with other service providers. There are numerous outreach teams already at work in the community. And I think that better collaboration with those might yield better outcomes, which kind of goes back to what I was getting excited about with the data project. And so for that reason, I would be supportive of this. I think if we were talking about removing security from the transportation center and the library, that would be something that the community wouldn't want to see based on what I've heard. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about replacing it with a more predictable, more reliable, more within our control, pair of people for now. See how it goes. If it's successful, we'll develop cost estimates for the FY26 budget, which begins in July 25. Is that right? Good Lord, it's late already. It's been a long day. Yes, thanks.
And I will add also that with these individuals, they will actually be able to give more services.
Yeah.
Because they will be trained at a slightly higher level, but also on a state level, which makes a difference with what they can provide.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chief Hardy. Select Board, any other comments from you before I pass it to the public? No? Okay, so members of the public. So I'll take some hands from the room and from Zoom at the back, and then we'll go to Zoom, and then we'll go here, and then we'll go here, and then we'll go back to Zoom. Yes. If you'd like to come to the microphone. Yep.
Hello, my name's Robin Morgan. I live in Brattleboro. I just wanted to first say I'm so happy that the town and the police are engaging in data-based examination of our resources. And when we think about what is needed in the future, as you're talking about the FY26 budget, I would really hope that those decisions are made directly from what this data has told us. We just heard that 36% of the calls to the police are for non-crime reasons, and that the recommendations of the data examining firm were that there be deeper collaboration with social services to meet these people's needs and to get them into a situation where they're not causing people to call the police. So if we're going to be adding more positions to increase safety of our town, I really hope that we're going to think about putting resources towards things that would actually decrease the number of incidents rather than simply addressing the symptoms that we're already seeing. That's what I would really, really recommend for this future budget season.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I think the first person on Zoom who had their hand raised is Stacy. Yep.
You okay?
Okay.
Okay. Just a quick question about the 2 security guards that we currently have through the company. Are we still paying them the budget amount, even though they're not showing for consistent hours for whatever reasons? And could this move also technically not just help steady our wages and our hours for that position, but also the flow of people?
Great. Thank you for your question. I'm going to pass it to the town manager.
Thanks for your question. Yeah, I believe we are not paying them when they can't fill the positions. That's not the case. And the other part was
consistency.
Like about the flow.
Yeah, I don't know how to address that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think it was Randy next.
Yes. Hi, Randy Blodgett from West Brattleboro. Is it 80 man hours for the 2 positions, or what's? I'm not sure what the normal an hourly per week is. I was just curious.
They would be full-time positions, yes.
But is that 40 hours per?
40 hours per week.
I was just curious.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. All right, and then I lost track. So let's see. I think John and Lissa, and then we'll come back to the room. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Lissa Weinman, and I'm here with John Loja. We own 118 Elliott on Elliott Street, and I just wanted to really commend Norma Hardy and the police department. I think you guys are doing an amazing job, and you're so articulate and explaining everything. I just really appreciate your efforts, and we do support this concept of hiring up to 3 new people to create more presence on the street of unarmed officers. I think that's a really great idea. We want to see more of that. However, we would like you to also include, as I know you sometimes do, Elliott Street. I mean, I heard a lot about Main Street. We are right next to the
and Elm Street.
Right there at the edge of the downtown. I think, so I just wanted to make sure that.
The problem, I mean, I've spoken. Hi, how are you? We have a constant stream of people, coming on our property. We have no way to stop them. We've asked the police, and I've spoken with Chief Hardy, and we just don't know what to do. And, that's great to have somebody, patrolling the area, but they're going back there with such impunity, they'll just move away and come back 5 minutes later. So, I don't really know what we're supposed to do. And, that's really my question.
Anyway, I just wanted to support the concept of having that hire while recognizing Robin Morgan's point. And I do think that we, as a town, need to be advocating more to our federal delegation and really being activist in terms of more federal money for housing and helping us, all of our small towns in this country.
Thank you, Lissa. Just remind folks, we're really talking right now about these 2 positions for unarmed resource assistance folks. So keep the comments to that, please. I'm afraid I don't know your name. Caitlin, come on up.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Baucom. Thank you so much. Oh boy, I have so many questions. But yeah, as far as those 2 positions go, so if I'm misunderstanding, correct me, but it sounds you're wanting to deputize citizens to respond to things like human trafficking and domestic violence, unarmed.
And keep going with the questions this way, and then I will
Okay, I hear you're wanting to deputize citizens to respond to things like human trafficking and domestic violence so that cops don't have to get involved as much. Not having cops called on social services issues is absolutely valid. Are the people that you're deputizing for BRAT going to be trained by anyone other than cops?
Great, thank you. You have other questions?
No, I would like yes, but.
What was her question? Yeah.
That's my question. I have so many other questions.
So what I do is I'll take all your questions, then we'll hear some responses, and if there's a follow-up, you're certainly welcome to ask it.
I would love a real response to that question.
Great, okay.
Are these people going to be trained by anyone other than cops, whether it's at a state level or a Brattleboro level?
Understood, thank you. So let's talk about training for these positions.
Okay. Yes. So the short answer is yes, that they would be, because when we want to put people in these positions, and since we're just talking about these two positions, I think that it would be a lot of clarity once we talk about the entire concept, because we're talking about just these two positions. Then that's why I say the short answer is yes, because all of our officers are trained by other people and other entities. We don't just train with police entities. I bring in people from the community that want to talk to my officers about domestic violence, being survivors of it, being victim of it. I bring in people that deal with human trafficking, and they talk to my officers. I send my officers to different entities within the town that deal with people with special needs, so we know how to better interact. I talk with people that are interpreters for the deaf, because I want my officers to be well-rounded in everything that they do. So that would be not different, to be able to have these people able to do the same things. Also, since we're just talking about these two people, I will say that the entire team is a build-up of different entities, not simply these two people.
Great, thank you, Chief. Let's go back to Zoom for one, and then I'll come back to the room. So I think we've got Karen, and then I think Lisa. Yeah. I'm just going to take this.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Daniel. I don't think you can see me very well, but can you hear me?
You just fine. Hi, Karen.
Hi. So I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the library, and just wanted to say very emphatically how much we've appreciated the security that we've had, and what an incredible difference it's made. I have to say that when we were first talking about adding professional security, some of us, myself included, were really apprehensive that it would be a negative culture change for the library. In fact, what it's done is to make it possible for us to maintain the culture in the library that we really strive for, of being able to welcome everyone in the community and to provide extraordinary library services, which I know the Select Board is well aware has been extremely difficult for our staff, as amazing as they are. It's been very difficult to keep up with the everyday tasks of being a librarian and dealing with patrons for library services, while also being overwhelmed by social services needs and a higher and higher level of risk. And having somebody there to provide security, although it isn't 100% of the time, has really relieved stress for the staff and helped to restore and maintain the positive atmosphere in the library. I'm very interested in the model that we're talking about tonight. I have to say, we really like what we've had, so I'm a little bit nervous about a change, but certainly very enthusiastic that it may provide us with more coverage. And just really want to thank you for your support and hope that you will continue to provide that for us. Thank you.
So we're going to go to Lisa, then we're going to come back to Sonia, and then we're going to come back to the motion.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the board chair of the Boys and Girls Club, which is on Flat Street. And I'm so happy to hear about the, I guess not additional security, but the more consistent security happening at the transportation center. And my question is, I guess I would just like clarity on hours and how, oh, sorry. Look
I
at
know,
you.
it's weird.
And if patrolling is happening, how does that happen? When is that happening? Yeah, when are you, what are the hours, I guess?
Yep. Thanks, Lisa. So Lisa's questions about hours and operations with security services. I'm assuming these new resource officers will have maybe potentially different hours?
Yes, and that's the thing that that's a combination of the things that we are looking at because of I've been contacted by you all, particularly where the children are, and so we've been trying to look at what are the times, because we know that very early in the morning is an issue, as well as maybe in the afternoons when children are going back and forth. So we've been, myself and the assistant chief, been trying to formulate how we could get the best bang for our buck, basically, for our first two, which we think that if we can address some of those issues during those times of the day, we can make the schedule fit those busier times that we're getting reports of problems, and we can work around that with the officer being assigned there to try to have a well-rounded ability to cover that area. And also, I just want to go back because I don't want to forget to say this to when the other people were talking about Elm Street, that I just want everyone to know that to feel free to contact me and we can discuss your areas and your problems, because that's how we formulate plans on how to react to them.
Great. Thank you, Chief. We're going to go to Sonia, and then we're going to come back to the board for consideration of the motion.
I think Red is before me, actually. I don't want to skip the line here. Sorry?
First.
Oh, are you sure? Since I saw right ahead of me, I'm not quite prepared. Okay, so just to agree. A few thoughts. One is that it kind of it feels a little hard to talk about this proposal, which I know has been in the works for a while, because it feels so far from where the conversation has been over the last few years. And to be honest, it feels actually quite counter to what the data just presented in terms of the police force not being the appropriate folks to respond to a lot of these calls that we're getting. And even the librarian board of trustees who just spoke, who said they really appreciated having that person in the library, really wanted that person in the library to help with social services. And especially if the community safety fund is being used to fund this, it feels like we should be really focusing on providing the services that these people need to actually minimize the incidents that we're all talking about. Nobody wants folks to be living in front of the transportation system and like leaving needles around in front of NYT. Like, no one wants that. We want like, if we're going to have a team of folks walking around downtown, we want that team to be social services and social workers and actually getting people the needs they want. We want an overdose prevention site so people have a place to actually do drugs that's not where these kids are going to be, and that they can actually get the substance abuse and substance use resources that would actually stop this problem from happening. And we want there to actually be housing for people to have. Other towns like Northampton and Amherst have been piloting non-cop run 911 dispatch centers, right? Like, we need somebody to call, and it's not always appropriate to call the cops. Let's have other resources to call. Let's actually invest in our community in a really real way, instead of just saying, oh, let's throw everything on the cops. If we're going to have a team of folks walking around downtown, it shouldn't just be folks that are training to be police. It should be folks with really real de-escalation and social service skills. I've been to a de-escalation training by our local cops. It was very, very well-meaning, very, very like, I was like, yes, you went to the training. I see where you got that. I do de-escalation trainings with civilians, and it was a completely different scene. It would be very different if something like this was not housed in the police. It should be a separate department, especially if it's being funded by community safety funds. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia. I just want to clarify, this is not being funded by community safety funds. This is completely unbudgeted, just like the security services were. And as John said before, we're going to figure that out. Board, we have a motion before us. Do you need more public comment to be able to make a decision on that motion right now? We've got 4 people that would like to speak.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, I see. We have a couple of other things that are also part of this conversation, and I think there's going to be lots of opportunities for people to weigh in, trying to balance, input with action. So, Board, the motion before you is to formalize the Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team and hire 2 team members to replace the contracted security officers downtown as presented. Any final discussion on that motion? France? Yes. I can't see you. Yeah, there you go.
Just for clarity, is this canceling the contract with the security company?
That's a great question.
If you're voting these 2 positions in.
That's a great question. Thank you. John?
Yes, that's the intent of it, is to replace the current contract with the security services with this, the hiring of these 2 BRAT team members. And we would do a transition there because they'd have to be hired, so it wouldn't be immediate ending of that contract, but that would be phased out. So.
Great, thank you.
I thought that should be
it's a good. Yeah, it's fine. Thank you. Appreciate it, Franz.
So I'm planning on voting in favor of this motion, but I also want to include in the conversation at this point that this does not represent a new step or an increase in our commitment to safety issues in the downtown. It's a replacement of an existing service with what could be a better service, and I'm in favor of it on those grounds. But I'm also looking at the following pages where we get to the action plan, not the other motions, but the action plan itself, because I think that's what we need to talk about. So anyway, I plan to vote in favor of this motion.
Great, thank you. Any other final comments from select board members? Okay, so the motion's before you for formalizing the Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team and hiring 2 team members to replace the contracted security officers downtown as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0. Okay, so Chief, would you like to walk us through the action plan part of the memo? I think Franz, pointed out totally appropriately. This thing that we just did right now is part of that action plan, but maybe you want to kind of backtrack to the short-term stuff?
Yes, and for some reason I couldn't find my... there you go. Okay.
Snuck it out on
I couldn't find my page. So short-term, as I've talked about, and this will tell you what we've already started doing, what's ongoing, and what we're just trying to build upon to have this concept work with the plan. So short term, we've already started. When we have an officer available, we're trying to post him downtown as much as we can. Unfortunately, with the amount of jobs that we respond to, it's not always easy to keep someone there. And as many of you know, we can be there, and as long as there's a presence there, some of the actions are not happening. But as soon as everybody gets pulled away, or we have to go to the other side of town, or we're gone for a while, the actions and the activities start back up. So that's one of the things that we're facing. But we have started trying to place an officer in the area of downtown and have him walk around and interact with people that way. And I just also want to say that when you talk about social services, okay, so one thing I will talk about is the fact that we provide some of the best social services that you're ever going to see anywhere in the state. Okay, my department is not only empathetic, but we also are community-based. We reach out to help people. We do not want to arrest people all the time. We do not abuse our authority. We do not abuse people when we deal with them. Okay, so I just want to put that out there. When you talk about social services, I've never seen officers that are able to provide comfort and empathy to people in such a way that I see with this department, and I've been doing this for 32 years. So I just want to make that statement. So one of the things that we're going to try to do is have an officer that's available downtown as much as possible. That is ongoing. We've started trying to pull officers when we have someone extra available to try to put them there. You'll see that more. We'll be able to cover that more in September when we have our 5 new officers come off of training. That's something that we're going to try to do. Also, we go down with DPW and PD, also with our HCRS police liaisons, because that was a part of the team that I wanted to talk about when I heard the concerns about people being police people, that we have 2 HCRS liaisons that work with the police department, and I don't think there's anyone in this town that could not be happy with the results we've gotten from Kayla and Knowles. I think that we are just very, very lucky to have such professionals that work alongside us. So we've been able to give those services with people that don't need to be arrested when we respond to some of these scenes. And Knowles has just been, I don't think anyone can say a bad thing about any of his interactions, and he's helped many, many people in this town. So that is ongoing. So what we do is we're having regular cleanups in the morning. We go around with DPW. We do cleanup for drug use, criminal activity that we've seen in the mornings, being available for places, particularly by the youth theater, by the Boys and Girls Club, where we've had people that workers have to come in the morning early and are accosted, or have to accost people that are sleeping in their doorways, that are utilizing drugs, that are doing things that the workers do not feel comfortable having to talk to them. So sometimes we may just come by and just tell them, it's time to move, or let's go get up and walk away, because we have people coming into the building. So that is ongoing. We have also talked to town manager about enhancing the lighting, particularly in the parking lots. Preston lot, myself and the assistant chief have gone and walked around and looked at places where that might be possible. We've also talked about maybe adding cameras around town in certain positions that may be effective for not only just for things like crimes, because people think cameras, they think crimes, but it can also be for informational purposes, bad weather. We've talked with DP. That's all of our short-term things. And we also are trying to give out, what we do is, right now we have some individuals that they use drugs. We know that they're addicted. We've tried to help them and offer them services, and they basically do not, or not ready for services at this time. So what we've done is, if we see people, like particularly in Preston Lot, I'll do Preston Lot because Preston Lot's right there, it's right in everyone's face, so to speak, if you're not in Preston Lot and you're over at the garage. So those are the 2 areas where we get the most calls at certain times of people doing illegal activities, particularly utilizing drugs in plain view and in plain sight. So what we will do now is, we've seen people, if they've shown us active drug use within these public places, then we will trespass them from that place for 30 days. It's not a normal trespass. We're not trying to trespass anyone for a year in these spots. But what we're doing is telling them that you cannot do your active drug use out in the open. And that's one of the issues that we've had. And that is, I think anyone can tell you they've walked down, and this, because there's been no recourse, and because there's no fright, and no one really has been told stop it. So we're telling them to stop it, especially at areas where the youth theater is, in areas where the Boys and Girls Club is. Even when you walk down, if you're walking down some of the streets, like we talk about Elliott, Harmony Lot, all of those areas, and in the parking garage. Because if you're in the parking garage, you're still in public view of people that are trying to park their vehicles and try to come out. So we're saying, no, it's time to say stop that. So we've been doing that, and that's ongoing. So that's our short-term plan.
Thank you, Chief. You want to talk about the long term as well?
Sure. So, okay, well, I'll go to medium.
Okay.
Because that is something that once we have this in place to have the two people, we can already start to see if we're getting benefits from it and if it's working for us. So the entire team, it would be to talk about what we talked about tonight, and also in addition with all of the other things we put in for the short term. And so I want people to understand that when we talk about the team, because I use that word often, team, the team is not just our two people and our officer downtown. It's also a part of our HCRS liaisons. We have two. We would like to hire a third because that will give us coverage during the nighttime hours where we get a lot of calls for assistance with people that are having a mental crisis. So we do try to work with social services in that manner to offer other things besides just police actions. So that, and let's see what else. Okay, so that we're doing now, and that's a part of the whole team. So we also would like to, in the future, look to hire a peer support specialist, because we think that if we have someone that has already been doing the work in town, and can have places that they can take people that need to be able to get services as far as their addiction, then we would like to be able to offer that and just say, this person does this, is trained in this, has dealt with this. So that's another action we can give to separate people away from having to be involved with the police department.
Can I ask a clarifying question about that?
Yes.
So in the material and in our motion later on, it says to hire and train 2 additional Brattleboro Resource Assistance team members. When you say a peer support person, are you seeing them as part of that BRAT team?
I'm seeing that as part of the BRAT team, yes, because if we are able to move forward and this is a success, then the long term is to hire 2 more people, because we can't have 24/7 coverage with 2 people.
Understood.
And plus, they're part of a team, and that was also that's for safety reasons, as far as as far as having backup right there with them. And they have an officer there in case needed for anything, to give them guidance, and also to be able to have arrest powers, because these people will not be police, they will not be acting as police officers. And so the person that I'm talking about, the peer support specialist, that's a separate person that will be able to deal with people that are in their addictions, that we can offer them services any time of day or night and just get them to where they need help.
And that would be a partnership, or that would be somebody that we employ?
That would be somebody, a part of our team.
Got it. Okay. You had a quick question?
Well,
I derailed us, I'm sorry.
More of the same, because the HRS people are they're HRS people that are embedded in our department. So would this peer support person, maybe it could be an embedded Turning Point person rather than being a town employee?
That's possible, yes. That would be beyond my, I have the ideas, but
Right.
that would be the workout.
But that might be
money.
an acceptable alternative.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Peter, you had a quick question, and Richard, you had a quick question. And then...
Not so much a question, just a sort of a statement that I'd witnessed firsthand on the Preston lot beginning at about 6:15 on last Thursday morning, and the "you can't do that" thing kind of rolled in, and watching that unfold over 2 hours of what resources it took, and nobody was arrested. So again, to the no criminal activity thing, but it doesn't stop the flow of our police department and our public works department and our fire department going down and dumping a tremendous amount of resources into trying to react to what we are hearing on a nonstop flow from our people who use our downtown for recreation, for entertainment, to our downtown retailers who are complaining and turning away business, or businesses being turned away as a result of this behavior. So I had a chance to literally watch that unfold over 2 hours, and all I saw was extreme consideration by our police department, professional behavior, nothing erratic. One person did actually get arrested. It was almost went unnoticed. It was happening so quietly that I just happened to notice somebody getting loaded into the back of the cruiser. I wasn't sure what that was about. So I know that we kind of like to focus on the fact that, at least it's been focused a few times, that this is non-criminal behavior, but it is behavior that we need to address. And right now, these are the means in which we need to address them. So I commend our police department for the work they're doing. I mean, there's other things that we can consider, and I know that the words restorative justice get thrown around, and I'm a full supporter of that. Drug courts are another thing. These are things that might be a little bit above our purview, but these are things that we can influence here on a ground level. Medicare services that offer treatment plans beyond 10 days would be something wonderful. I'm not a recovery expert, but I know that it takes more than 10 days to recover from at least an addict workforce development. And to Christine's Allen's point, sober living are things that are needed, and these are all part of a big plan. But these are just things to immediately address some of the issues that we have been experiencing. This entire board has been getting, our inbox pilfered with, stopped on the street and talked about, phone calls and texts. So all of these are heard, and these are just the immediate ways that we can try to slow this thing down so that we can get our hands around it and try to control it. And I would hope that we would be allowed some leeway in which to do that.
Thanks, Peter. Richard, real quick, and then I'd like to come back to the chief.
What happens to people that violate the 30-day trespass warning?
They get arrested.
Are you finding that they generally respect that trespass warning, or what's your experience with that?
Yes, most of them respect the trespass warning. We're not being overzealous as far as the 30 days. We're not being cruel. It's just a wake-up call that the town is just saying enough is enough when it comes to outwardly using drugs in the public eye. That's really what it is.
Thank you. Okay, Chief, I am really sorry. I kind of sidetracked you from your presentation. So we were in the kind of long-term zone, I believe.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'll talk about long-term when we're talking, we can start planning for the fiscal 26 budget would be the fact that in 30 years, this department has never had a dedicated team for downtown area. And with everything that's going on nowadays and all of the calls that the department has had to respond to all over town, I think this is the time to think about us being able to implement that dedicated team to the downtown area. So in the 2026 budget, I will ask for 3 more officers. This department has stayed at 27 for many years and was never able to fill half of those spots until we've been fortunate to be able to fill them. But we also know that with the amount of crimes, sex assaults, and thefts that we deal with, and I can throw big crazy numbers out at people, and I don't need to do that, because all you have to do is just look at our reports on Facebook or look in the Reform or look online, and you're going to see what we're dealing with all the time anyway. But to just know that when we're dealing with things in Brattleboro, you have to also understand that we also are assisting other state agencies. So we have other agencies that are within this town, like the sheriffs, if they call us for help and we don't have anyone available to help them, or state police if they call us for help. My detectives handle one of the largest amounts of sexual assault cases in the state, not just in Brattleboro, because we work with Safe Place, who Safe Places for children that are victimized. And we work with them and we do their investigations. So it's not that we're just, I just want people to understand that we are very spread out and very well-rounded department. And we have to do that to be able to maintain not only just the safety in the surrounding areas, which affects us, plus we also have to deal with the fact that we have drug dealers that come into town and sell drugs. So we have to deal with that also and be able to build our cases and arrest these individuals. So I think that all of that matters when I'm talking about why I'm asking for what I'm asking for. I think that sometimes people think that, oh, she just wants to just, create this bigger police force and, it's going to, no, that's not it at all. I'm being practical, okay? We have responded to over 195 assaults, 160 sex crimes, over 1,000 thefts, and we also have to respond to people, as the gentleman talked about people being in back of his property, doing whatever they're doing. So to be able to give the amount of attention we need to give to the downtown area, which is our commerce area, and also other parts where businesses are, such as Putney and wherever else that we have businesses, we need to be able to expand on our patrol procedures. And to do that, we need more officers.
Great. Thank you, Chief. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just speaking briefly to 3 additional cameras and the data analyst and the satellite office.
Point of order. Are you going to allow public comment to but that specifically, or is that
We're going to have public comment about this whole presentation. I actually interrupted it, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we're not at the end.
Yeah. So we talked about the cameras, okay, and as I said, that the cameras, I think we won't talk about tonight about locations of the cameras, because we don't know where would be the best service for the locations of the cameras, but we do know that we need more cameras in town. So that is a part of, because everything that we're trying to accomplish is multifaceted and it has layers. It's not just that I'm going to put police out and they're going to walk around and then everything will be fine and wonderful. It will be better, I believe, but we also have to have the tools to make it better. And thus the cameras, the lights, and we've talked about that. I've talked about that with John Potter, how to make all of these things work, the safety zones, to give us more ability to enforce these areas where we don't want these criminal activities, what I call quality of life crimes, because they're quality of life when they're affecting everyone else in the town. Then you're affecting not only the quality of life of the people that live here, you're affecting the quality of life of the people that have to have their business here and make a living here. So we have to think of a way that we have to be able to be fair to everyone, but we also have to be fair to, we want to be empathetic and we want people to get help and we want people, that's what Vermont is, okay? I love this town for that. But you have to be realistic that at some point you have to start thinking about everyone else that lives here and everyone else that has to deal with these things that are going on in the town.
Thanks. Would you like to speak about the data analyst and the potential satellite office?
Yes, the data analyst, we're hoping, is something that we will be able to incorporate, that we will be able to utilize, and that's something that we also would like to, because that will help us get data and keep our own programs as far as being able to follow how good or how bad we're doing. I'm hoping it will show how good we're doing, and it's also something that we want to share with the other departments, particularly the fire department. Because as you heard, sometimes we have things that we might respond to something that the fire department got a call to go to, a guy fell off the ladder, a medical call, and then it turns into a criminal call because the guy was shot. So I think that us being able to share that with the fire department also will help us know where we need to send the most resources, and if we have repeat places that we're constantly responding to these types of assaults and stuff like that.
And the satellite office, finally?
Yes. I believe that we need to have a satellite office because if we have the satellite office, particularly located in that area, it would keep our people from having to go back, because we're going to give them all the abilities to be able to maybe take reports. Or if you have fender benders with no injuries and you just want to do a report, they'll be able to do all of that, but they don't need to come back to the station to be able to do that if they have a place where they can go, a place where they can be able to take their meals, use the restroom, and stuff like that. Not to sit in the office, because I think people think satellite office, they think people are sitting in the office. That's not the case. The case is to keep them at as much time of their day where we want them to be, rather than having to travel back and forth, which happens now with my police officers also. that if they have to do a report, if they take a report on Main Street and it's a burglary or an assault, at some point they got to go back to the police station to finish their report.
Great. Thank you, Chief Hardy. So Select Board, we've got two motions here that encompass much of what was in the presentation there. I would like to take both of them, if we may. So would somebody like to make one of those motions? Peter?
Are we talking about motions?
2 and 3.
Two and three,
has
straight
4
through?
subparts, yes, please.
All A, B, D?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I will, I'll motion to move to add 3 additional cameras in the downtown area by the end of the year using the remaining community safety funds. Additionally, move to develop the FY26 budget alternate cost estimates for A, hiring 3 additional police officers, B, hiring and training 2 additional Brattleboro Resource Assistant team members, C, hiring an emergency service data analyst, and D, designing and constructing improvements to the Brattleboro Transportation Center to include a satellite office for the Brattleboro Police Department and its Brattleboro Resource Assistance team.
Thank you, Peter. Do you want to speak to the motion? Soon as
I mean, there's nothing about this that I haven't discussed at great length with the chief and the assistant chief. I'm in full support of all of this. Amongst the other things that I have heard over and over again, a satellite office for the police department downtown seems to be always in that top 3. So I'm hearing everybody when they're saying that. So I'm in full support of that. And also the cameras in downtown. I mean, we know it might not stop a crime, but it helps solve the crimes. So I'm always in favor of that. So yeah, my hand will be going up for this.
Thanks, Peter. Other Select Board members with comments or questions on this motion? Liz, and then Franz, and then Richard.
Well, I'm very appreciative of the work that the Brattleboro Police Department is doing, and I'm fully supporting these 2 initiatives. I also want to hark back to the data collection specialist and, the top 10 locations where crime has occurred. And, I feel that we need to calculate the amount of police time, effort, and expense, as well as all the other town expense that is related to, the motel program. And, that we need to build the case for revenue sharing based upon that to pay for these police expenses and these municipal expenses. And so I'm in support of this, and I'm also looking forward to working with the town staff to identify those costs and to have the governor's office understand the needs of this town that are based on the motel program.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Franz?
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Chief, for your remarks. Appreciate that. And I'm supportive of the motions. But I'd also like to address the Chief's remarks a little bit and tie them in with the town manager's memo that we started with here. To me, well, it's a big discussion, and I think everybody out there knows that. I think we all know that. But there are 3 things that I think for me, have come to form the crux of all this, and that these 3 areas need to be addressed simultaneously. The first area is that the population that we're talking about, whether they're drug addicted or unhoused or however we characterize them, but people who clearly are engaging in disturbing or disruptive activities in town, that we have to provide an adequate level of services to enable that part of our community to move in a better direction. And that there are various things that I think we need to, we're already doing a lot. The number of social service agencies, the efforts that the community are making, I think are, outstanding in many ways. I do think there's a couple of areas where we need to do better. One area is I think we need to provide additional toilet facilities downtown. That's just a biological imperative, and we need to address that. Another thing is that, as I think the Turning Point folks have so eloquently talked about, is sober living alternatives where people have places to stay sheltered and to spend their time during the day that are free of drugs and alcohol as ways to encourage them in their recovery process. I think that's really important. It's not something we have in this town right now. And the other thing I think we need is for people with addiction problems who are ready to make that leap to a different way of living. We need to make sure that they can access services virtually at the drop of the hat, and I know that that is an effort that is being made by the different agencies in town. When I was out with Officer Washburn driving around, he took me to a couple of those places. I'm very impressed with their efforts, but I think as a community, not even so much as a select board, but as a community, we need to make sure that those services are available immediately when they're needed, or else we miss our opportunities. So those are areas that I think we need to pay adequate attention. Based on those services being available, then I think we need the community as a whole to come together and realize that we have standards of behavior and ways that we expect people to think and act in our downtown. And this needs to be the subject of a comprehensive community public relations and messaging effort. It's, in the town manager's memo, and I think that's really important. We need to start talking about what we expect people to do and act like and how we expect people to think. I'm very supportive of the idea that we say no to giving cash to people on the street.
Franz, can I ask you to keep it to the motion?
No.
Well, I
right
can.
now.
I can ask you, and
So
I am
ask
asking
me,
you.
okay?
Yeah.
And I'm saying, no, I need to speak about this, and this is
And
my
I've
opportunity.
given you quite a lot of space already.
I'm sorry, but this is the stuff that these folks are here to talk about, and so far we're not getting there. And please don't clap, please don't applaud. Let's respect the chair's position on that. But I will wrap this up as quickly as I can. But I'm determined to get these ideas out there. And so we need to get the message out there that you're actually enabling people's behavior, you're not being compassionate by giving people money, and that the people who are engaged in these disruptive behaviors need to hear the message, you can't do that here. That needs to be a message that we get across very clearly. And then the third part of it is additional law enforcement resources. What's in this motion, and I'm getting back to the motion now, is stuff that's for fiscal year 26 predominantly. And I don't think we have that time to wait. I think we need to start doing things now. Now, I know that some things are happening, and I really appreciate your devoting more officers to being on the street downtown. I think that's great. But I'm just so eager to hear what we can do starting tomorrow that's going to make a difference for all the people who are coming to me, and I know they're going to you too, and saying, we're hurting. This is killing us. Our businesses are going down the tubes. We can't handle any more of this. And I think we need to find ways in addition to what's in this motion, and it's very difficult, especially from a budgetary point of view where we're just starting a new fiscal year and none of this is in the budget. What are we going to do? But I think those are the questions that need to be on the table, and I apologize for taking extra time.
Yeah. I want to point out that you already took an action tonight that's about right now. I'm going to come to you guys in a second if you don't mind. So the chief and the assistant chief already proposed a right now action. We just took it. There's some actions here that I think will be beneficial to this community. There's I think John said a 12-point plan, a path forward on community safety that this board has said is the highest priority that it had this year. And so I encourage you to kind of support that plan and get on board with that. And so I'm in support of the motion that's in front of us. I think it's time to hear from community members about it.
Daniel, can I just interject and ask a quick question?
Sure.
Was part of that 12-point plan a messaging
I believe
Yes.
so.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Help me out by just keeping your hand in the air and giving me a second to put you in some kind of order. So I'm going to start with Cassandra because I, did not recognize you before. I'm going to go Cassandra, Kevin, Spencer, and then I'll come back to you and figure it out. And then I see a lot of people on Zoom, so I won't forget them as well.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Holloway. I am a resident of downtown Brattleboro, so I live right downtown. I've lived in this area on and off for about 25 years. I also am the director of Building a Positive Community. We do substance use prevention work. I've also been on the board of the Recovery Center as president for many, many years. So I just want to kind of share who I am because I think I have a lot to bring. I also have worked directly with the police department for over a decade, as well as many of us social service providers. And I just want to let people know that they are collaborators, and we as social service providers also need to collaborate with each other. So I love what we could have, but I think right now we are just all in crisis mode. So I just want to encourage the police department and the select board to, all of us to work together, even social service providers, to how do we include the broader community, including those people who are downtown without homes, and people who are who have substance use disorders that can actually be part of the conversations, because this is going to take everybody at this point. It's not just going to take the select board or the police department or social service providers. We all need to be part of it. So I just wanted to think about what we can do as a community as well. And I love this messaging idea, but I'm just saying communication is such a challenge even within the field, and we all see each other a lot. So that is just another issue, but I think we need to focus on tangible things that we can do. And we're going to have housing issues. We're going to have substance use for a very long time. And we can't always blend that into the conversation because then it becomes overwhelming. What can we do as a community to create a culture or a climate actually that feels secure for everybody, including the people that we are talking about? And we can't lump them all together because the majority of those people are just trying to survive and they're not causing problems, and those people need to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassandra. I think I said Kevin next.
Hi, I'm Kevin Perry. I've lived in Brattleboro since 1976, and I have this copy that Patrick Moreland made for my wife, Callie. This is a copy of the town ordinances. And thank you for providing that for us. It's available to everybody online, and I
Kevin,
recommend...
I'm going to interrupt you and just ask you to keep it to the motion that's in front of you.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me start with the... I had 3 points that I wanted to make. And we're talking about enforcement. So what I'm trying to say is that we have codes that are clear that are not being enforced. I'm sorry, I believe I am addressing the issue, okay?
I'm going to let you keep going,
okay,
and then we'll see where we land.
Let me move on then. Let's talk about the transportation center and the satellite police office that we may have there, okay? So first of all, I'd like to just clarify something, that I don't believe it's true that we've never had a dedicated downtown police service, because you're in the building that it used to be in. This is downtown Brattleboro. Okay, so it was here for many years. Okay, so anyway, I wrote down some things, so let me check my notes here. Okay, so I believe the need is immediate. I agree with Franz that the satellite office can be opened tomorrow. There's no reason why not. We own the building, right? The town owns the building. We already have an office there, I believe, for the parking, right? So there's no reason why you can't just have a car a cruiser parked there tomorrow morning. Okay? So tomorrow, speaking of, and Franz mentioned the word tomorrow also, is that there will be children from our community coming and going from the youth theater, from the Boys and Girls Club, right? This is tomorrow. This isn't next week. This isn't fiscal year 2026. This isn't the next select board meeting. This is tomorrow. It's happening. So I suggest that that the police department open an office as soon as tomorrow, right downtown in the transportation center, where it is needed.
Thanks, Kevin. And folks, I'm sure you do, and I'm going to stop you there. We have many people who want to speak, and I need to balance that.
I will send a copy of this. I will send a copy of my statement to
email
all
it
of you
to
like
us.
I did
That'd
the
be
last
great.
time.
Thank you so much. Just to reiterate, yes, if you are feeling excited about something, you might be inclined to applaud. You might hear something that you're not excited about, and you might be inclined to boo. I'm not going to have that kind of atmosphere in this room. Okay, it's not okay. Chief Hardy, do you want to respond to Mr. Perry's comments? Because I feel like there's some clarification that would be helpful.
When I said, yes, thank you. When I talked about dedicated police department, I'm talking about dedicated police officers that is their job, to be downtown, not where they're located. They were located here in this building, but they were not dedicated to the downtown area. They were dedicated to the entire town. I'm talking about a team that is actually dedicated to this area. So that, I just wanted to just clarify that. That's really what I want to clarify.
Great, thank you. Em?
Thank you. I'm Megas Russell, District 7. I was also a co-facilitator of the community safety review process that happened in 2020 into 2021. So a couple of things. I want to just acknowledge that I'm hearing some real common ground on a couple of areas. One is, I think many, if not all of us, can agree that we want to not have to see and be in relationship with so much human suffering that we're seeing on a daily basis downtown in our town. And there's a lot of concern in this space, and I'm really grateful for that concern. And we may be coming from different reasons, right? Like maybe some of us are concerned about our livelihood and our business. Maybe some of us are concerned about our neighbors and our friends. Maybe some of us see a vision for something different than a greatly expanded police department. But we're all concerned, and we're all wanting to address these concerns together. So I'm grateful to be here for that. And I'm hearing some shared concern about inflating our town budget. And I'm also hearing about adding 8 police officers plus a new building to the budget. And so that's just some common ground I'm wanting to touch in on. The data presentation was really helpful, and it was also really congruent with the data that we found in the community safety review in regards to the ratio mix of what the calls are coming to the police department. And yes, I will again reiterate that most of those calls and most of the responses are not for crimes. And also I want to reiterate that the police are literally the only people to call. So if you need help and you need it now, you're going to call 911, you're going to call the police, right? So I really hope, I know that it feels like this is a crisis right now, but we actually started this process long ago, years ago, and there's so much potential for new infrastructure to address this need that is inflating, absolutely, and we're all seeing that and we're all feeling that. And there's some really grounded recommendations and infrastructure for how we might be able to build infrastructure that doesn't look like greatly inflating our police department's role and scope of practice in our community. This is, when I speak about the police, this is about policy and infrastructure. It's not about people. We have some really compassionate police officers, and we're hearing about the empathy and the way that police are responding. I don't actually doubt that. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to really address the fact that infrastructurally, does it make sense to send all of our social support and basic need issues in our community to the police? It sure doesn't to me, but I do understand why, considering that that's a really built institution that we have in place, it might feel like it is the right place. I want to address this issue of the cameras. This is a real violation of the commitment that the Select Board has been making over the last 4 years to actually create due process around how the Community Safety Fund is going to be used. It's complete violation of even Peter Elwell's intention for creating that fund. The money is going back into using infrastructure for policing resources. You said it, to follow up on crimes. I really just want to check that point of process. In that many select board meetings, there was discussion about actually creating a process by which those funds were going to be sort of checked out and used, and that never happened. And here we are using that funds to go right back into the police department. So, y'all seem to be completely ready to go on this. My request really is that we engage some visionary leadership here as a town to look at how we might be able to build infrastructure that doesn't look like an incredible expanse of the police department to address some deep issues that we have in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to hear from Spencer, then we're going to go to Red, and then we're going to check in on the time.
Mine's about the long-term vision for Brattleboro and as it pertains to law enforcement. Is that on point?
That is totally on point.
Okay. This is like so small. Thank you. I'm Spencer Crisp. I was born in Brattleboro. I'm a 9th-generation Vermonter, and I live in Brattleboro. Having 3 more officers and dedicated officers to the downtown area is the best idea I've heard in this entire, going on 4-hour meeting. I'd actually be in favor of, doubling the police force in Brattleboro, and I'd be totally on board for that. Do it. The time to try and save the Titanic is before it hits the iceberg, not after. If we let Brattleboro become the disgusting hellscape that is Portland, Oregon, or even as bad as Burlington, Vermont has gotten, it can be too late. We have to take proactive measures now to preserve and improve our town before it goes to hell like these other cities have. Burlington, Vermont should be ashamed of itself. We simply cannot house everyone in the greater region. Our towns in Vermont other towns in Vermont need to do their part to assist the unhoused. Other towns are abdicating their responsibility onto us, and it's breaking our back. Criminals and illicit drug behavior operate like the forces of water under gravity. They will always find the path of least resistance. So whatever town in a given region that is pathetic and soft on crime is where they will always flock to. And compassion for criminals that results in cruelty to law-abiding citizens is unjust and fundamentally illogical. That is what we call destructive empathy, which benefits no one. And I agree with you, what you said before the break, but it's now the business owners, working families who have become the underdog, unfortunately. We all need to thank and support the Brattleboro Police. Having our citizens back the police, plus them having the strong support of the state and the judiciary so that their authority actually has teeth. Then they can do their jobs more effectively to arrest the destructive forces harming our community. Let us send a collective loud message that fentanyl is clearly a weapon of mass destruction. Anyone who sells fentanyl is a terrorist and should be legally treated as a terrorist. Let's send a region-wide message that criminal behavior is not welcome in Brattleboro. And we are not the path of least resistance. Being tough is compassionate. Criminals, transits, and drug dealers are robbing our focus and limited resources. They are robbing our focus on the middle class, on kids, on middle-class housing and jobs. Do we want to be known as an arts hub, a tourist destination, a family community, or do we want to be known as a drug hub? With pride in our town, let's establish a positive vision for Brattleboro for the next 25 years. A vision where businesses are robustly supported, the middle class are supported, all folks feel safe in the parking garage, and people want to come here to put their kids in school and raise a family. Let's get to the point where we can shift our focus and resources on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Spencer. What do you do for a living? You're a lawyer. Thank you for your work. So, I'm going to go to Zoom. I have a lot of people who want to speak. Not everyone is going to be able to get to speak. I just want to be straightforward with you about that. We have a couple of other things on our docket tonight, and I think that I feel like I understand where the board is going with this. I think it's important to hear balanced opinions from the community, so we're going to hear a different opinion now. And so, Red, I welcome you to the meeting. Thank you for waiting so long. I'm sorry I kept you.
Oh, thank you. My name is Red Durkin. I am the owner of Everyone's Books in downtown Brattleboro. I hope I'm not too far back in the topics. I guess I had a question and a comment / concern. When it comes to the additional resource officers, there was some clarity about how they're not going to be police officers, in that they aren't going to be armed, they're not going to have arresting powers, etc. But I am wondering what resources they are going to be able to offer, and if there's any clarity on what specifically they're able to do for people. And I guess my comment too, as a downtown business owner, is that my largest concern, and it was briefly touched on earlier, is the access to public bathrooms in downtown Brattleboro, and I don't think any of this addresses that. It's the most disruptive thing for my business personally, from my observations, is people come in to use the bathrooms. They also come in to use it to clean themselves up, and they don't have anywhere else to go. And being living creatures, they are going to need to use the bathroom. So I didn't hear any part of the plan that addresses any of that. And I'm just to reiterate the question about what the resource officers are actually able to do in terms of connecting people with resources. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Chief, Assistant Chief, would either of you like to speak a little bit more about that BRAT team and what kind of resources and also their status as officers? I think that needs clarification.
Yes. Sure. I'll try and crush this quick for you. So we'll have them patrolling the downtown area. It's a visual presence directly connected to the police department that we'll have downtown, that also has direct connections to the police department downtown. They'll be doing all the things that we currently have the security doing, like providing escorts to the parking lots as requested, things like that, checking at the library, different places like that. But we'll have a lot more expectations on them than we do the security. So we'll have them focusing on connecting with businesses and other organizations downtown, so that there's more of a direct connection there and a better flow of information back and forth on the needs of everyone downtown and needs of the community downtown, rather than the limited scope we have of that right now that we feel could be much better. The taking police reports, late reported things downtown that is pulling officers down or having to make phone calls to people when we would much prefer to have like an in-person interaction with people, so they'll be able to do those. We have a lot of retail theft downtown that I'm sure business owners are well aware of. So having people that are downtown that are better able to come get those reports, make sure that those things are diligently followed up on, super important, because if we can connect early on those, then hopefully it stops them from continuing, it stops the patterns. Also, I think the chief mentioned vehicle crashes. We have a lot of vehicle crashes, especially in the downtown area, because there's a lot of parking lots in the downtown area. No shocker there. We currently don't respond to a lot of those crashes, as some of you I'm sure are aware. We'll take those over the phone and tell people they can come to the station and fill out a report or fill one out online, which isn't great. That's suboptimal. We don't like doing that. It's not a great way to provide a service. These people will be able to do those things with the training we give them, so that we'll have more of a hands-on service downtown for things like that. Directing traffic downtown, which is often a problem when we have crashes and we have other things that occur downtown. They'll be able to do those things safely and effectively. When we talked about earlier about trespass warnings, whether it's for us talking to people having problems in the parking lots or other spaces, or businesses that have issues and don't want people in their business, that is a regular occurrence we deal with. These people will be able to do those things effectively. And probably one of the most important things is the training they'll get to work in conjunction with other emergency services and social services personnel downtown. We have, 8 8 to 10 outreach programs that work downtown independently. They don't work together. We want these people to have much better knowledge of those things so they're able to spend the time to connect people and help them get to the right resources. They're not the person providing the resource, but they're a person that has knowledge of the resources and is helping and able to direct people to those things when they need it.
Great. Thank you, Assistant Chief Evans.
You're welcome.
Select Board, I want to bring this back here. Community members, I know that there are more questions to be asked, and it is 10 to 10, and we have some business to attend to here, plus a little bit more. Community safety is a topic that's on our agenda almost every meeting right now until October, and I imagine when we get to October, it'll probably be on agendas for meetings in that time afterwards as well. So it is really great to see so many people engaged in this kind of politics. Usually we see, I don't know, 3 or 4 people here. And so I know that people really care. I know that people want to see action. They want to see action yesterday that had results the day before that. And our police department didn't just form yesterday. Our police department and our fire EMS department has been working diligently, for a really long time. So have the social services agencies in your community. I can attest to that personally. So, Board, I would like us to consider these 2 motions, but before we do so, I want to pose a question to you all that, I don't know, might derail things. So there was some, desire to see all of this happen right now. Right now we have a motion on the floor to develop cost estimates for fiscal year 26. That begins July 25. I want to check in with the board's interest in, would you like to see the items that are under 3 happen as an unbudgeted expense in fiscal year 25, as in tomorrow? Peter. I'll go Peter, then Liz.
Okay. That's a really big question. Right?
Yes, it is.
Because that's...
when John wrote it, I was very angry at him.
Yeah. Well, don't be too angry.
Okay.
All right. I personally am prepared to move that quickly.
Okay.
Okay. I would be in support of that, but I also understand that is going to add an additional tax burden to people who are already burdened by our tax system, and I recognize that. I also recognize that change is good right up until it happens, and one of the things that it would change is the amount that you would pay in your taxes. But we are not going to resolve this problem with what we have.
Okay.
Right?
So I'm hearing, yeah. Okay, Liz?
Well, I certainly support the initiative. The question is whether the police department is ready for us to accelerate this program. And also, we could be looking at other resources to fund these initiatives. So I will qualify my yes with looking at alternative funding and seeing how realistic and how quickly the department can move to accelerate this program.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I would support that as well.
Franz, and then Richard, and then Daniel.
So I think Liz just said what would basically be my thinking, that there's operational challenges here, there's budgetary challenges here for sure, there's even process challenges.
Mm-hmm.
How do we reach into the already adopted budget? And I never addressed that issue in being on the Finance Committee or the Select Board. So I don't know what we can do. And my previous statement, as impassioned as it may have been, also needs to recognize what the realities are in terms of what we can do. But I think we need to take a good hard look at what we can do and how we can pay for it and what the community wants from us. So I'd say yes, let's figure it out. Let's see what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
So if something's unbudgeted, where does the money come from?
Well, it needs to be raised somehow. And so, John, do you want to speak to that?
I would just say that if the board wants to have us develop these as options for the FY26 budget, your motion is very helpful, and we can go ahead and do that. If you do want to do something sooner, we could come back with, or you could direct us to implement this as soon as possible, and we would likely have to come back with a way to do that. So we can look into that and try to do it if that's what the board wants to do. And it would have an impact. We probably would have to go to an RTM or something like that. Mm-hmm. It would be complicated, but we could figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Can we?
Let me speak on this for a second. So, the original motion was to get cost estimates. We don't even have estimates for this proposal right now. That's not to poo-poo it. It's just like process-wise, you want to say yes to something that you know the dollar amount on. Ideally. And so I don't think we can say, yes, do this tomorrow, today. I think we can say, yes, bring us numbers for like our next meeting, which would be a massive lift, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I see you. So I say, let's get those numbers. Let's know what we're working with. If we had to then, let's check in with the town attorney as well about some process and the finance director. And then if we have to warn a special RTM, there's a period of time that elapses between warning it and having it happen. And then RTM will need to vote as a body, and they'll need to vote affirmatively for this in order for this to happen. I'm not in favor of us exploring all of those options, but I just want you guys to know that if we say, hey, let's explore those options, that doesn't mean that can definitely happen. But I'm okay with exploring those.
I'm okay with going down the pipeline, I guess. But I mean, it's easy for the five of us to say. We can say yes or no to it tonight. What should we ask the chief what that does to her department?
Well, I'll tell you, if anyone remembers when I first came here, the department was down half. You had half of a department that was working, and the crime rate and the jobs they responded to kept rising. So we've put a lot of hard work into building up the department and hiring and being able to give the same quality of individuals that we've put in. And I'm saying that to say that we do what we need to do to get what we need to get done, and it would be hard on us, but we would make it work. And I will also say that if you've decided to give us the two people immediately, then we can start with that process, because we can start that training for those individuals. Then at least we're getting our feet putting some rubber to the road, so to speak, by being able to start with that right away and immediately. And I'll also say that with people that feel hesitant about this program and hiring these people, I will tell you that I've been contacted by quite a few individuals from the community, particularly young people, that have been very interested in this plan. And I have actually two of them that I will be setting up personal meetings with to talk to them about the ideas that we have for the community. So it's not just that I want to just police.
Yeah.
Well, I think she's talking about positions that you already voted to.
Yeah, and I would have given Chief Hardy the grace to just let her finish her statement. She knows that we approved that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, that is the beginning, is what I was saying. Yeah. That's a way for us to start immediately because of the training process. The other thing is to think about when you're doing the cost estimates of the police officers, that there were only 2 police academies per year.
Totally.
And so when you have that, remember the process. Yeah. The 17 weeks in the academy, the 12 weeks training with us before we can put them on. So if we have someone that we can get into the February academy, as many as we can get into the February academy, we would be able to utilize them, July? The level 3s.
They would be just finishing their FTEP now, or field training, sorry. Just finishing their field training now, like our crew is currently.
Right, like the ones we have now.
Absolutely.
So I just like to put that out there.
Thank you. And I do think that the board understands that even if we were to say, yes, let's try and accelerate this, there are built-in lags on many of these things. Some of it is going to be building related. Some of it is people related. Hiring takes a while, even for the position that's not, somebody that's going to go to the academy. I assume the data analysis probably wouldn't go to the academy.
Correct.
But what I am hearing from my fellow board members is a desire to kind of accelerate this process. So, Mr. Smith, did you want to say something that's going to be useful for us to hear right now?
I think so.
Okay, go right ahead.
So, about as tall as Spencer here.
I don't think many of us are.
So, Aaron Smith, I think delaying the start of any of this, like even without knowing cost estimates, would be costlier both monetarily and the community to delay it any further, regardless of having cost estimates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we look at where we are now, and can we afford another delay? And as far as the additional tax burden, there's got to be a way to find monies in the budget. Like last RTM cycle, there was a vote to increase the budget, and it was suggested to go to climate change, but that is only a suggestion. There's no way that money got approved but can't be allocated. Maybe we can tap some of that fund.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a community living in a bad climate regarding crime.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Okay, so we use Robert's rules for small boards, and in that procedure, the chair can make motions, and so I'm going to amend the motion that I think Peter made.
Peter, I think.
Made 100 years ago, to develop cost estimates and a plan forward to fund hiring 3 additional police officers, hiring and training 2 additional BRAT team members, I'm going to call them, hiring an emergency services data analyst, and designing and constructing improvements to the Brattleboro Transportation Center to include a satellite office for the Brattleboro Police Department and its Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team. Board members, that's the motion that's in front of you, Elizabeth.
Don't forget number 2.
I'm going to come back to that.
Okay, very good.
So you're making a motion to amend Peter's motion?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the difference in the...
The difference is it no longer says FY26 budget alternates, so it's cost estimates and a plan to fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's an amendment that's on the floor. Any discussion? I hope not.
Just a real quick, I don't want to throw a wrench in this, but...
Please don't.
Are we locked into the transportation center as an option for the satellite center, or could there be a cheaper alternative?
I don't know.
It's a good question.
We could deal with that at some later date, but I'm just thinking maybe
this building probably has some office space.
Well, maybe one of the organizations that are affected by the problem might have elected space.
Well, there's already parking.
You just amended to say to
Wait.
the best possible.
Randy, I can't hear you when everyone else is talking.
I was just saying, can you just amend your amendment to say the best place possible after evaluation?
That is a very friendly amendment, and I will accept it. So that is amended to include a satellite office at the best place possible, I believe.
Okay, good.
Okay. Let me try again with this motion. So the motion just got amended. John.
That will delay the implementation because we'll have to do an analysis of other locations, but we can have a quick look at that if you're willing to accept like a really brief look at that with probably a focus on the transportation center.
Sure, okay. I am willing to accept that. I'm seeing some heads nodding over here. Okay. Do you feel like I need to amend this motion for clarity's sake?
No.
Okay. It is publicly, noted that we just thought about your amendment, and it was very gratefully received. Thank you. Okay, so I just did offer an amended motion. I guess we need to vote on whether we want to amend the motion. So all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, so we just amended the motion. And now we're going to vote on the actual motion as it stands. So this is to move to develop cost estimates and a plan to fund hiring 3 additional police officers, hiring and training 2 additional BRAT team members, hiring an emergency services data analyst, and designing and constructing improvements to the Brattleboro Transportation Center or other place to include a satellite office for the Brattleboro Police Department and its Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team. Any final discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. I feel like this is going to come back and we're going to have a lot more conversation about what is actually going to happen with this. I want to come back to another motion that is actually still on the floor. This motion says it's, I think Peter made it, to add 3 additional cameras in the downtown area by the end of the year using the remaining community safety funds. We sort of talked around it. We didn't talk directly to it. Does anyone want to know like how much money this costs?
I would.
Yeah. How much money does it cost, John?
We have about approximately 40-some thousand left in the fund. We would not exceed what's left in the fund.
Yeah, thank you. And I take M. Megas Russell's point. I think the way that we've spent the community safety funds has absolutely not been in line with previous statements about how we might do so. I'm not castigating us about it. Like I voted in favor of, using a significant chunk of them to make the transportation center a place that was a lot safer. I think that in our human services funding conversation that's coming up, we have an opportunity to reevaluate the impact that that is making. And I just veered off from germaneness, so I'm going to stop talking. This is what happens when it gets late. So there's a motion to add 3 additional cameras in the downtown area. Are we ready to vote on that motion?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes 5-0. Police Department, thank you for joining us this evening. Really appreciate your presentation. I know that members of the community do. And hey, if you want to stick around, we actually have 2 other things to discuss before you make your mass exodus. Penelope, this would not be the time. I'm really trying to land this plane.
So I just wanted to ask you
I'm very serious.
Thank you for all your work. One question. I have a list of questions which I'm not going to ask. But
You understand we just closed out this item.
I know, but you can think about it. Is that there's a big problem with people cycling on the sidewalk.
Okay.
Huge.
Talk with these guys.
They told me to ask you if it's okay if we can put writing on the pavement like you
Okay,
used to
so
have.
totally not like germane to our topic right now, but I think if you have a conversation with the police department, comes back to John, Liz and I can think about it for a future agenda.
The Traffic Safety Committee.
Okay.
Traffic Safety Committee.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Board, folks, if you're going to leave, please leave quickly and quietly so we can continue with our business. Board, we have 2 more items on the agenda. One the next one is planning the annual safety fair and forum. And I am going to ask Kevin, can you please... I used to be a middle school teacher and it's feeling very familiar right now. So if you're in the room, can you allow us to conduct our meeting? If you're trying to leave, can you leave?
You were a middle school teacher?
Yes, I was.
So, do you want me to start?
No, I want everyone to actually be able to hear what's being said.
You could beat your gavel.
I really don't want to beat the gavel. Okay.
I didn't get my 3 minutes, You didn't get
Yeah, you absolutely did, sir.
I just want you to know that.
Yeah, you can take a look at the tape. So our next item on the list is planning an annual safety fair and forum. And I'm actually going to ask us to table this for the next meeting. It's not something that needed action tonight. I think the feedback that John was looking for, if you want to give him feedback between now and the next meeting over email, that'll be fine. Any dissent? No. Okay, so then in which case we're going to move on to the Esteyville Park Gazebo update. And good Lord, Carol Olaf from the Parks and Rec Department, the Rec and Parks Department, has been waiting patiently. So we're going to give Carol the opportunity to make a brief presentation and then we're going to take some action. And then we're going to... can you just leave them for now? Yeah.
Come on up.
Yeah, come closer. Thanks for staying. Yeah. Carol, speed version of this presentation.
Perfect. First of all, I'm sad to see the room empty out.
I know.
With all this excitement. So, in a nutshell, the department was granted $37,000 for the FY25 budget. That was to renovate the gazebo at Esteyville Park, ex-Esteyville Gazebo / Fuller Park. With that being said, part of the process was that we'd have a community engagement session. So I worked closely with the planning department, Sue Fillion, and we held a community engagement session on July 10th at the park. The goal of the public forum was to give the community an opportunity to share their thoughts on how they would like to see that particular park shape for the future. There is a project page on the town website. Anybody can check that out under the Recreation and Parks Department, under Fuller Park, Esteyville Bandstand. With that all being said, the big thing that we wanted to get out of the community forum was direction for the gazebo itself. And I have some photos here this evening that people would like to grab one here on the corner. We had about 35 people in attendance that evening, and we talked about a lot of different things, but we focused some time on the gazebo itself. With looking at the gazebo, we gave them, gave the community an option: restore as is, as you can see up on the screen there, take it down about half that level, or go down to ground level. There was pros and cons to all of that. What the sentiment of the largest group of people would like to see it go down to ground level. And then other feedback that we received that night was improvements for the park, different site amenities. So in a nutshell, that was, a lot of these are outlined in your memo this evening, the different aspects that we gave the community, gave those that were in attendance to look at. And things, then the feedback that we got on park improvements was everything from adding a water feature to the park, adding electrical service, putting in a skating rink, adding a soccer net, create a dog park. Others said don't create a dog park. It would just become a dogway station. Add some new picnic tables, add some new park benches. I said, but the biggest focus point is going to be the gazebo itself. So that's really what I'm here this evening to talk to you about. That's nailed it right down to a small nutshell for you.
Thanks, Carol.
Daniel.
Okay, board, I'm looking for a motion to kick off our brief conversation on this matter.
I'll make a motion.
France.
This is a little bit unfair because my motion would be different from the motion that's,
Make that
that's
motion
here.
then. Make them.
Okay.
This is a suggested motion.
All right.
You don't have
so
to.
my motion is, what I really think is we need more time to think about this and talk about it.
Would you like to table it for another meeting?
I would like to table it for another meeting,
Carol,
but there's no
I'm really
motion
sorry
yet.
I kept you.
And I'd be willing to speak to all the different details of what's gone on and the work that Carol has done on it with Sue Fillion, and I think that's important. But there's enough nuance to it. I'm not sure we really want to engage in a detailed discussion of this tonight, but that's what I think it needs.
Okay. I'd like to know what it is that is preventing you from being able to take action on it tonight.
It's that I disagree with the proposal. That,
in what way?
That I think the that the right answer is to have it elevated a couple of feet up, as is on the subsequent picture, if you could show us that picture.
Okay. Like the one at the Common?
Yeah, not this one. This one.
Okay.
And then the bottom one shows what we have at the Common.
Do you like what you have at the Common?
Yeah, I do.
So what if the motion said this: to endorse pursuing a project to rehabilitate the Esteyville bandstand and place it, and have it situated just like the one at the Common? Would you accept that?
Well, I actually disagree. I do the stairs a little differently, but
would you trust that some construction people and design people would do a good job?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But I don't want it flat on the ground. I think for historical reasons and functional reasons and aesthetic reasons that the other, that having it up a couple of feet is a better solution.
Totally heard. I don't think we need to table this. I think we can take care of it this evening. Board, are you with me? Okay. Peter, you're not with me. What do you need?
I'm just curious if the majority of the people say they want it flat on the ground, but one person says they want it raised. One person wins?
That's a fair point.
That's a
what I'm
very fair
trying to
point.
do is get the work done, and I see that we have a successful bandstand at the Common.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a common sense kind of approach that it will be high enough so that people sitting back can like see who's up on the stage.
And it's not that I disagree with Franz.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So I would accept your motion having said that.
Yeah, nice. What do you think, Richard? You down for it?
You know, I want to accede to the wishes of the majority of the people that express their opinion. And I don't think my personal opinion is one person's opinion. And I think this ground level is really ugly. It offends my aesthetic
Fine.
sense.
So,
and
what do you think about, like, say, 4 feet off the ground with some steps?
I like the mid-level one better. It has more integrity to it from just an aesthetic point of view.
Very good.
But the other question in my mind is, has anybody addressed the acoustics? If you're going to use this for any music or kind of...
That's a little beyond our pay grade.
This conversation.
I wonder...
Let's keep it on the design.
I am prepared to answer all of these issues. I've thought this through in detail, but I thought maybe tonight wasn't the time to get into this much detail. But I do have responses to those issues, which I grant are important issues.
That's great. And I'm going to say that we're going to go ahead and take care of this business tonight. We've had Carol wait in here 2 hours longer than she needed to be, and out of respect for her time, I'm not going to table this for another meeting.
Well, that's a vote that we get to take.
It absolutely is, yeah. And if we want to take it right now, we can do that.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to go ahead, but if people have reservations...
So can I just ask, so Carol, the majority of the people wanted the one on the ground. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's based on those that were in attendance. I carol a lot. I don't have a strong preference, whether it's any one of the three. It's what the community wants. So
all right.
I will move forward with the board's pleasure.
Yeah, Elizabeth, and then Franz.
I just think
and then
that
we're moving.
if the board has strong feelings about the mid-level, that we are elected representatives of the town, and we can make this decision.
Yeah, agreed. Sir, would you like to speak?
I will.
Okay.
I'm Joe Rivers from the Historical
Joe.
Society. Hi. A social studies teacher. Civics is something I've been teaching for a long time and very impressed with this evening's activities. Been here for a long time, watching it all unfold. The Historical Society does have an opinion on this. You haven't asked. You've referenced a lot of opinions. 35 people showed up. I think people within 500 feet of the, was it 500 feet, Carol? Of the...
We're all sent an invitation.
If you'd like to share the Historical Society's opinion, we're ready to receive it.
Oh, okay. Well, I just like to say 35 people showed up and you're ready to act on those 35 people's opinion without any sense of the history behind this. And so it's not a gazebo, it was a bandstand. And that bandstand was created by the Ladies Enterprise Society, not by Esteyville or by Fuller. And it was an organization of women that lived in Esteyville. Their responsibility that they took upon themselves was to create a community and to take care of one another. And they came to the select board in 1913 and they asked if they could raise funds to build that bandstand. And the structure of it is unique. It's unique because they wanted it to form follows function. And the function was to be able to have picnics on that park. That was the whole idea of the park, was to have community gatherings. And so it is at its height because they stored all of their tables and chairs that they raised money to store in that area in order to have these activities for about 70 years. And so the Esteyville community was a great part of this town and remains that way. It's a historical and cultural artifact, and I'm disappointed that I know you've had a busy night.
What would you like to see done?
I would like to see you put a little more thought into it, and so I support what Franz was suggesting, that you look into it a little bit more.
Okay.
There was a suggestion earlier tonight by
why don't we take
person.
a vote about whether we'll table it or not, and then that way we'll be able to proceed one way or another. So, Franz, do you want to make a motion to table this for another time? I'm asking you to make a motion to table it for another time because that's kind of what you said earlier. If you don't want to make that motion,
I think we're far enough into it now that I would prefer to simply explain my point of view now and see if that's sufficient to reach a conclusion. My original idea of tabling was so that we wouldn't get into this discussion tonight, but the fact is we are into it, and I think what I can say now would help people resolve things.
I want to be adjourned by 10:30.
Okay, well, if I will take 3 minutes and tell you what I have to say, and then we can decide whether we're ready to proceed or not. And what I would say is that Carol and Sue put together a good process where 35 people came, self-selected, not in any sense a random sample of the community or anything. And those people were kind of all over the place. And, the same people would say, well, I like this, and somebody would say something, oh, I like that, and it went back and forth. And yes, when we did a show of hands, very informal, the majority said, well, let's just put it on the ground. But they didn't have these pictures, because I just had these pictures created the other day. So they didn't have a good visual on what it would actually look like. And I think without these pictures and without thinking about, well, there is historical significance here, that doesn't mean we have to preserve it exactly as is. But I think the appearance with, being up a little bit, it's functional from a music point of view. I've talked to several musicians. They all agree, yes, you have to have it elevated if you want to perform music there. Otherwise, people can't see and they can't hear. So functionally, it's important. If it's going to be a bandstand, the appearance, it preserves the original appearance. It's altered, but it is preservationist in that regard. And it's nicer, as Richard said. Aesthetically, it's much more pleasing to have it elevated than sitting flat on the ground. So it's for functional reasons and historical reasons and aesthetic reasons. And I think that the people who voted, put their hands up, weren't taking a firm position that, oh, this is better than that. It was just like, a nice little show of hands. And I don't think we're obligated to consider that a majority vote of the community. I think we're perfectly okay, and that a lot of people thought, this way's fine, that way's fine, oh, I'll put it on the ground. It just didn't have that formality of a vote. It was just kind of a sentiment. And I think we'd be well advised, and that the community would be very happy to see it at the mid-level.
Wonderful.
So that's what I have to say.
Just like how it looks at the Common.
Similar to the way it looks at the
kind of reference to me.
Jump to that
motion. Liz, you got something to say?
I do.
Can you help us land this?
Yes, so my family has had great interest in this gazebo, and my late brother-in-law used to give concerts at this. He was unable to give a concert
in the gazebo because he couldn't get there. And he was unable to have electricity to amplify his music because, well, at the gazebo because somebody had to have an extension cord to Francine Valerio's house. So I have witnessed concerts at this place with a not functioning gazebo.
Yes.
And I am fully supported, and I have taken the time and interest to form an opinion. And I think the mid-level is appropriate, aesthetically pleasing, and I hope it has electricity, and I hope that it's well used by the musicians in town in honor of my late brother-in-law, Charlie McLaughlin.
Wonderful. Are you ready to make a motion that can help us do that?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
Didn't Franz make one? Oh, no, he's the table.
Yeah.
Give me your piece of paper.
I've got to
Oh, my gosh.
See, that is a sign that we
That's a
are.
sign.
We have overstayed our welcome. There's a bat in the room.
All right.
That's it.
So,
Open that door?
yeah, good heavens.
All right.
I do not get paid anywhere close to enough for this.
I move that the select board approve of the Park and Rec Department to proceed with a plan for a mid-rise gazebo at the Esteyville Common.
Okay.
All right.
Board members, I need your focus right here. It's just a bat.
It's never going to hit you.
So Liz has made a motion.
Just go. Power through.
Liz has made a motion to approve the Parks and Rec plan to rehabilitate the Esteyville bandstand at a mid-level height. Richard, do I have your ears over here?
I'm okay.
Yeah, Franz, you with me?
I am.
Great, it's gone. Close the door.
Gone.
Are we ready for that motion?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of rehabilitating the bandstand at the medium height with steps, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. That passes 5-0. Joe, thank you for your input. Carol, I'm so sorry you waited so long.
Not a problem.
Everyone else, thank you so much. We have one further motion to make. Bethany, I see you, and good Lord, we got to close this out. Peter.
I motion. We adjourn.
I just made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
I also.
That passes 5-0. Thank you, interpreters. I'm sorry we made you stay late. Thank you, BCTV. Same deal. Thank you, members of the community. Thank you, town staff. Hope everybody has a quiet morning tomorrow. Thank you to the bat. Good night.
When you open the next meeting, you got to play the bat.
I got to go to the bathroom.